everybody, and welcome back to another Nextlander podcast. What a show today. Brad Shoemaker, how are you?
I'm doing better than Shang Tsung is doing.
Fantastic, I guess. Alex Navarro, where are you on the Shang Tsung meter?
Kind of depends on which Shang Tsung we're talking about, because there are several to choose from, and some are doing better than others.
On the Shang Tsung to Quan Chi meter,
The Shang Tsung-averse.
Well, let's see. On the Quan Chi hair meter, I think I'm closer to him, but on the how am I doing scale, I'd say I'm maybe in the ballpark of where main timeline Shang Tsung is.
Okay, well, it's a great segue. Thank you very much, Alex. Let me
That's what I'm here for.
Connect with that. We are going to be talking about Mortal Kombat 1 and Mortal Kombat 1 spoilers. So we'll be talking about that first, hopefully before our first break, which will keep most of the markers in place if you're looking to skip that spoiler. But we are going to go deep into the story spoilers for Mortal Kombat 1. I say it one more time. We're going to be talking about the story from Mortal Kombat 1.
We're going to do it.
We're going to do it, which I'm excited to do.
Yeah.
After that, we're going to come back. We're going to talk more about some other video games, including Brad saw Alan Wake 2. Saw played?
Right.
Saw played.
I played like 2 hours Alan Wake 2.
So if you want to skip the Mortal Kombat stuff, come back for the Alan Wake 2. Come for the Mortal Kombat 1, stick around for the Alan Wake 2.
I'll just say it up front. The game looks kind of wild.
That's awesome. I can't wait to hear
then
about
you want to stick around.
Hear about that, and we'll have a bunch more stuff too after the break and then the news as always. But first, anything else going on before we get into Mortal Kombat, or you guys just want to jump right in?
I just finished that mode last night, and I'm definitely like just
hot,
ready to sink my claws into this thing.
You're hot. I finished it on, I think, Thursday night, and it's a testament to the number of games we touched. It feels like it was a month ago. It's like I've forgotten about it at this point, but
should we get in?
Let's do it.
Dive in?
Sure.
Let's do it.
All right. The Mortal Kombat 1 spoilers beginneth here. Let me mark them down on my notes so I have it. All right.
So we've all completed this.
We've all finished it. I finished it last week. You guys might have to walk me through some of the finer details, but I am absolutely relying on you to walk me through the granular, weird winks and nods for stuff that you guys know about that I completely missed.
The references I picked up on are, he says Deadly Alliance at one point.
A couple
Do they say Armageddon? Do they say the words Deception and Armageddon?
Yes, they say both
Deception.
of those. Okay. And Deadly Alliance.
Okay. Like, this game really is kind of like a love letter to what I consider the lost Mortal Kombat games. No offense to people who like them, but like the 5 through 7 era on the PS2 and stuff, like I just didn't really play those games a lot, and this very much, in the same way that 11 was very much a tribute to the first 3 games.
Mm-hmm.
This one, I mean, there's some 4 in here as well, I guess. Like, this one very much feels like a tribute to the games that came after that.
Yes.
Which really just feels like, if you look at the whole arc of the Mortal Kombat franchise, that it's just repeatedly folding in on itself.
Yes.
Because we had the first 3 games, then we had the next 4 games, and MKDC is its own thing. Then they rebooted the first 3 games. Then they rebooted the first 3 games again.
Yes.
Now they are rebooting the next 4 games again.
It is simultaneously folding in on itself and tearing itself apart and breaking into many different pieces, because they just can't quite settle on exactly what level of reboot they want this to be.
So, Brad, can you take us through the end, since you just played the end of 11 to 1, where are we exactly when 1 starts?
Well, so actually, funny thing, I played some Mortal Kombat, the 9th one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And also some Mortal Kombat X over the weekend.
Oh, great.
Just because, like, I played through 11 in Aftermath, like I said, and then I played through 1 right after that, and I was like, I want to go back and see these other cinematic story modes they did, and, like, compare and see how it's evolved. It's weird because on like a format level, they are exactly the same. Like even 9, the first one they did this real big cinematic story mode with. Everything about the editing, the way it transitions in and out of fights, like the names of the chapters appearing as titles on the screen, it all feels identical.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, 9 is like impossible to go back to. It looks terrible by comparison. I mean, it was a different time.
It was a 360 game, wasn't it?
It was a 360.
Yeah.
Like the in-game stuff isn't so bad. It's really the CG.
Yeah.
The between fight stuff. 10 also, or X, whatever you want to call it, like obviously has aged better, but also looks pretty rough. Like it really made me realize the leap between X and 11 in terms of production values and CG quality and all that stuff was fucking massive. And I had forgotten about that. And then obviously 1 is even better looking than that by kind of a lot. Sorry, what was the original question?
The original question was basically set up 1 from the perspective of 11.
Sorry, the reason I brought up 9 is that 9 is in and of itself a reboot.
Yeah.
Like 9 rebooted. 9 rebooted, like 9 goes through the stories of 1 through 3, but in a self-aware way where like some of the characters know that they're repeating things.
Right.
Some of them know like, hey, this has happened before, but now things are different. Like Raiden knows that it has to play out differently in order to not end the world or whatever. So then they kind of get right back around to that same thing in 11. So it's yet another reboot. And then by the end of 11, Liu Kang has become Raiden and become a god and then become the keeper of time. And then by the end of 11 Aftermath, Shang Tsung also has kind of freed himself from his otherworldly bonds. Kind of also is vying for the same power, I guess I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Like, 11, I mean, I'll just say the end of Aftermath ends with a choice. Like, you kind of follow Shang Tsung through Aftermath as he tries to rewrite the events of 11. And then it's a clash between him and Liu Kang at the end in front of the hourglass, and you actually pick who you want to play in that last fight and win with. And then there are 2 endings.
Okay.
So, easily the best part of this game to me was the idea that both of those endings took place. Both of those endings happened.
Mm-hmm. Sure, Schrodinger's Mortal Kombat ending.
And that was way more potent for me because I had just played through Aftermath like days before I got to the ending of this. And also, Alex, like you brought it up on Friday when we were streaming this, and like the Titan lady shows up to tempt Shang Tsung in the intro, and you were like, "Oh, it's Chronica, right?" And I had to like bite my tongue. I'm like, "No, it's definitely not."
Yeah, it's not.
It's like I did not see that coming at all.
I should have in the end. Like, I really feel like they should not have been able to put that one over on me, because if I had just remembered a little bit more about what happened in Aftermath, I think I would have put the pieces together.
I mean, like, I think on one level you could look at that twist and say, like, so the twist is that who you think is a Titan, like Chronica's sister or Chronica herself or whatever, who is tempting these characters in this story into going against Liu Kang, turns out to actually be the Shang Tsung from the end of 11, from the end of Aftermath.
What's her name? Damashi or
Damashi is who they say the name is of the Titan lady who looks like Chronica.
Which is kind of a weird thing, because when they say it, they're like, who the hell is that? And then immediately they're like, oh, actually, that's just Shang Tsung, by the way, just in case you were wondering. It's
a little bit of a weird, the way that it's presented is a little strange. But the thing I was going to say is, like, I think on one level you could look at that reveal that, like, oh, it was actually the original Shang Tsung behind it the whole time, and say, like, oh, that's kind of like a lazy or obvious twist. On the other hand, it feels extremely consistent with who they have now built Shang Tsung up to be, as this, like, unoutsmartable trickster god kind of guy.
Yeah, he's very low-key. Yeah.
He's very low-key.
Yeah. Okay, so a lot of this for me is going to be colored by the fact that I don't follow modern Marvel, and so actually maybe more of this is lifted from that than I realize. Definitely the multiverse stuff, I know.
Well, and the whole ending of this game, I'm going to tell you right now, feels like they at some point decided Mortal Kombat needs to have its Avengers Endgame moment.
Sure.
And so we're doing that come hell or high water.
So I think that's definitely part of it. Like, people were straight up finding, like, Ed Boon tweets where he, like, very strongly praised the end of Endgame as, like, being amazing. So I'm sure that's part of it. I think the end of this also calls back to Armageddon, though. Because isn't, like, a giant fight on a pyramid with everybody, like, the end of Armageddon?
I couldn't tell you, because that's not a game that I spent a great deal amount of time playing, and I think if you want to talk to much of the Mortal Kombat fan base, I think that might be a familiar refrain, because those PS2 era games, some of them are fine, but I can't tell you anything that happened in them because they're just not that memorable.
Is that that's where 9 starts, right? Is that where 9 starts, on the pyramid, and then
yes,
the
I believe
breaks?
That's right.
Okay,
I think that's right.
Because that's what I thought. I didn't play Armageddon, but I remember being like, I don't know what the hell is going on here, but where everybody's dying on this pyramid, and that's where the amulet shatters or whatever, right? And
yes,
I didn't mind the reveal I thought it was a little, because I wasn't sure. There were so many characters in this game I had not known about because they're from Mortal Kombat games I wasn't familiar with. I thought Damashi or Fake Chronica was just another character from another game that I didn't recognize. You know, like, oh, this looks a lot like Chronica, but look, all the ninjas look the same too. So like maybe I just don't know. And then when it was revealed it was Shang Tsung, and then when it started in the last, let's say 30% of the game, where it just puts the pedal down into the multiverse stuff, and it's like, that to me is when I think things felt a little bit vanilla, which is weird to say about Mortal Kombat, because it really feels like
bland ending.
Yeah, well, it feels like it feels like it should be going off the rails. It is very firmly on the rails of 2023 cinematic stuff.
Yeah. So that again, I think is probably a place where it didn't bother me as much, because I'm not already marinating in that stuff constantly. I totally agree with Alex. Like, I guess we'll get there, but like the very ending, like the last like 5 minutes of the game, like barely feels like an ending. Like it felt like it just ended. It didn't have an ending, but like most of everything from the Shang Tsung reveal up to the last shit on top of the pyramid, I was like 1,000% on board with. Like that was the point I was by far the most excited about this game. You know, like when all the other versions of the characters start showing up from the other universes, you know, and then it's like, oh, that's the Katana from the last game who is in love with Liu Kang, and then
this is your Raiden, you know,
and they finally kiss, and my girlfriend was very excited about that. But you know what I mean? It was like, okay, here are all the characters from the old games here to kind of like play off of their new era counterparts.
Okay, well, let me pause you there for a second, because not to get too in the like Mortal Kombat lore weeds, which I'm not sure the lore is supposed to make sense.
We are in the Mortal Kombat lore Amazon and have been for some time.
Yes,
so
I've got this narrative machete over here and ready to hack away.
Okay, so help me out here for a second. When Liu Kang decides to reintegrate with the power, the Time Lord powers, the Titan powers, or whatever he was, the Timekeeper powers he had given up and Garrus had stored away in his secret compartment inside the hourglass.
In his Jade Jaguar, because where else would you keep it?
Yeah. So when he reintegrates with that, they don't really explore anything about the setup Garrus gives him, which is like, you won't be able to come back and be Earth Defender anymore. They kind of just leave that out there.
So here is something else you may be interested in, perhaps annoyed to hear, is that the arcade mode or the tower mode, which is just the classic like play through a Mortal Kombat challenge tower, those all have character endings, and they are all like canonically extending the main story. Like,
I mentioned that on the podcast, because I did a couple of them where it's just like, oh, after the events, you know, this person went back and was like,
okay, so
oh shit,
Liu Kang's,
really? Okay,
did you do Liu Kang's or watch it? Because his addresses that.
I did the vampire ladies and I did scorpions.
Okay. So,
Scorpion starts up.
This starts up the new. Okay. One thing I have to hammer them on here a little bit is that the rival ninja clan to all just being Lin Kuei and then splitting off. They're doing it. First of all, Chinese ninja is already kind of a weird thing.
Oh, totally. I mean,
they literally they give the new ninja clan a Japanese name.
Yeah. Oh, well, so the Shirai Ryu has always been the name going all the way back, but like
that's my point. But he's now a Chinese person.
Sure. Well, so also it pains me to say Ryu. Like, I can't believe they're sticking with that pronunciation. But also, this franchise is so damn cheesy and like earnest about its cheesiness that I kind of get it.
Wait, I don't think I noticed that, but didn't they say they named it after his girlfriend or the woman who he starts it with? Is she Japanese?
I don't remember them having a line about that, but maybe they do.
I don't know if I got into it last week. I think I kind of avoided talking about it, but yeah, like, I mean, Scorpion himself is a different person in this. He's Kuai Liang, Kuai Liang is the second Sub-Zero from the original games.
Yes.
Right. Basically, like the real quick, at the end of MK1, Scorpion killed the original Bihan, the original Sub-Zero.
Right. The guy with the scar. He's the guy with the scar.
Yes.
The good Sub-Zero.
Yes. So Bihan came back from another realm as Noob Saibot. And his younger brother, Kuai Liang, became the new Sub-Zero, who is actually not as big, like Bihan is a giant asshole in all timelines. And Kuai Liang is not. But that was the weird thing, is that, oh my god, why am I blanking on Scorpion's original name? who is Japanese. I'm sure.
Yes.
God, why?
He's part of a Japanese ninja clan, and the whole point is that it's the rival ninja clans.
I think it's Hanzo Hasashi, right? I believe and so I think I haven't seen his ending, but I think there's a reference to Scorpion's original wife in there, right?
Oh, is that who that is? So
Yes.
They referenced somebody, and I didn't know who it was because I thought it was a character I just didn't know. And I thought, Alex, they do say that in honor of her, they name it the clan after her.
Okay, I think in the main ending they don't elaborate on why it's called that. That might have been something that was in Scorpion's Tower ending.
I think it's in Scorpion's Tower ending.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because in the moment, it's very much just like, nope, he called it the Shirai Ryu.
Yes.
There you go.
It's in his like postcard ending where they do the postcard scenes. In
let me be clear, none of the nationality stuff really makes much difference in this universe at all, other than the fact that it is a Chinese ninja clan and a Japanese ninja clan that were originally rivals. At this point, like nationality and the world might not even are there countries in this world anymore? Like it just seems like it's Earth realm, and it's just okay, it's Earth.
Well, okay. So my question was, and thank you, Brad, for kind of filling me in. So they do go into more of what happens to Liu Kang in his
So what happens?
Arcade ending.
What happens is he loses his immortality by taking those time powers back on. He, for whatever reason, is no longer immortal.
Oh,
why?
Oh, wait. I thought he was
Veronica
going. I thought he was going the other way.
It's not explained why. Okay. It's just all he says. Just like he's just like Geras was right. I was irreparably altered. I have lost my immortality. But it's also like kind of a distinction without a difference because he flat out says like. It's like, he basically is like, don't worry, my lifespan will still span eons, but I will die eventually. It's like, okay, so you're still going to live for billions of years or something? What's the deal?
That is I'm trying to write my way into eventually making this a conflict at some point, but we don't need it right now.
So actually, I think the real purpose there is to just revert Liu Kang to his original state, because he flat out just says, like, it does mean I'll have to think of a successor, and I know the perfect person. It's Geras. Like, he's steadfast and blah, blah, blah. And so, like, Geras becomes the new keeper of time, and that basically just lets them say, like, all right, Liu Kang's mortal again. He's just Liu Kang again now. Like,
it was a little weird.
Does he still have the glowy eyes?
I don't know.
Is he still doing Raiden shit?
I have video in front of me. I can actually tell you. Yes, he does. Well, but this is all just, like, still illustrations for these endings, so it's hard to say.
But let's talk about what actually happens here, because my main thing with this story mode is that I think the first half is really good. Like, the first 8 or 9 chapters are really excellent because they do a good job of setting up a lot of interesting potential stuff here with, the Earthrealm, Outworld stuff, everything going on with this mysterious benefactor. There's some good dynamic between Quan Chi and Shang Tsung as, the sort of evil pawns and all this stuff. And then when I think it starts getting around to explaining itself and unveiling things and sort of like launching you into what is effectively the end game, I feel like it kind of beefs it. And when I say beefs it, I mean they don't make good on a lot of stuff they set up with the other characters that are not like Liu Kang, Geras, and Shang Tsung and his like immediate people. Like, Johnny Cage just becomes a total background character. Kenshi becomes a total background character. Kung Lao, Raiden, all of them kind of just fall totally into the background. All the villains, their various motivations beyond the, take over Outworld, whatever, what have you, become completely irrelevant as soon as Shang Tsung unveils himself and just says, yeah, haha, it was me, you're all pawns, fuck you. And, like, I can live with that to a certain degree if what you do after that pays off in a way that is exciting and makes the other stuff not matter as much. And they don't do it, is the problem that I have, is that once they get to the last chapter or two, where it's like Melina, and then it's like the Liu Kang, and then it's the, it's the cavalcade of genetic mistakes.
Yeah, we got to talk about chapter 15 eventually, but yes.
Yeah, that whole stretch feels like just they are rushing you through to wherever they want to end this, and where they end it is not satisfying at all.
Yeah, I don't really disagree with any of that. Well, I think the first half of the game is pretty uneven, but the rest of what you said I'm mostly with. I am sympathetic to just the sheer size of this cast. Like, you could never involve everybody meaningfully in the end, because there's, God, what are there? I mean,
I think it's
between playable characters and other characters who are not playable but still factor in the story, there must be like 30 characters, and then they bring a bunch of alternate versions of them into the story.
Yeah.
I mean, it's insane. Like, you'd never be able to address the fate of everyone or make them all feel like they're involved.
But that's the thing, is that I think they leave a few too many just completely unimportant to what's going on, and
Yeah.
I think the ones they do make important, they don't find a way to make the payoff for their stories interesting.
Like, it definitely did feel like, like Kenshi, Raiden, Johnny Cage are all pretty big characters early on. It definitely felt more like the game's attitude was like, well, they have their time in the story, now we're going to do other stuff, and not like, hey, they were important, and so we're going to bring them back around and like give them a conclusion. There's a weird amount of time spent on this Sindel versus Sindel fight, which I'm not quite sure. In fact, there's a weird amount of time spent on the whole Ermac being a bunch of souls and then having Jared, the deceased king, like become Ermac, and Melina gets to meet her father again in weird zombie corpse form.
And never turns back to Ermac. Like, kind of, I was waiting for for Jared to kind of recede back into the mess of souls.
Yeah, and then there's this long fight with evil Sindel from the previous timeline where good Sindel ends up dying, and then she merges with Ermac, and like that whole little subplot feels like a lot of time to spend on that. But it didn't.
For a lot of messiness that doesn't really mean a whole lot in the grand scheme of things.
It didn't super factor into the larger story that much.
Like, the thing they're always hammering on with the Outworld stuff is that, Melina is the rightful successor to Sindel once Sindel, loses power or dies. But she has the Tarkat disease. And that's another thing that they just leave hanging, which is to say that they keep giving her the serum. They have the serum seemingly every time they need it, which is great for them. But like now that Sindel's dead, she's going to ascend, but what are they going to do about her Tarkat disease? Nope, just going to forget about it. We got to get to this fucking time pyramid right now.
Yeah, like Baraka and Reptile also both kind of just exit the story at a certain point.
Yeah, which is disappointing because I think this Reptile is the most interesting Reptile they've done. And I think what they do with Baraka in his setup and the stuff with the Tarkat could be really interesting if you elaborate on it and find a way to tie that into everything, and they don't.
Yeah, well, I think they're just leaving themselves a bunch of sequel hooks.
Yeah.
Like, that's kind of how these games have gone since 9, is like they are just leaving a bunch of dangling threads they can pull on later.
But the thing...
I quite liked the Sub-Zero versus Scorpion chapter. Like,
yes.
I thought that was some pretty good tension.
I think that's the last great chapter of it.
But then Sub-Zero just vanishes from the story after that, right? I don't think he ever shows up again. But again, that's another thing where it's like, okay, well... Now the Lin Kuei are evil. Now, like, that's yet another thing for them to pick up next game.
They name drop Cyrax and Sector and say they're his loyal lieutenants. So, seemingly by the next game, they will be cyborgs for one reason or another.
I think there are hints of that in his ending, even.
Yeah.
Tower ending.
But this is, like, the thing you said about the sequel hooks and all that, I don't mind leaving sequel hooks. Like, in the end, post-credits end that they show is definitely a hook for some kind, for like where they're probably going to go with the sequel.
Is that the bit of like weird? Is that Codal Havoc? Is that what that is? It's Havoc, but is that in Havoc?
I think it's Havoc
Khan?
in charge of a Chaos Realm, like Havoc as the Lord of Chaos Realm.
Okay. It looks like he's wearing the Kotal Khan armor because like Quan Chi, Sub-Zero, and Tanya Katana are behind him, so he's definitely a mashup. But Havoc is such a weird character to focus on as somebody who has zero connection to those games to me.
It's a weird character to focus on. His setup in the story is barely there, other than that one bit with Quan Chi where he's doing the Soul Taker thing, and he says, "I gotta help him because I want to kill fucking Order Realm. I want to take it over. I want to liberate it." And then he just kind of shuts the fuck up for most of the game after that. But the sequel hooks in 11. The sequel hook in 11, which was the whole story of 11, which was the reboot, the slate clean, the whole new thing they could be doing. That was great. I was excited about that. I didn't leave that game feeling like, okay, I wish I had seen how this other stuff paid off, because everything in that game's story fed directly into this big new direction that they were headed in. I was like, I'm satisfied where all this stuff went. I love where most of the character directions were going. I love that the slate is clean. Let's see where it goes. I came out of this one feeling like I wish they had done something different.
I agree with you. give them a slight benefit of the doubt just because it's the first one. It's the springboard foundational thing for where they have to go. But having kind of gone down this path already, I also felt like we kind of did this already. You got to give me a little bit more since we already did this whole reboot and it was done well.
And that's
in 9, 10, 11.
That's where I get hung up is that they have done this before and they have done things and done it well. They did it obviously they didn't reboot it every single time, but like the story they told over the last trilogy, which involved, multiple resets and various things, all felt pretty coherent in the grand scheme of things, despite the fact that it goes some pretty buck wild places. This just feels like they run out of steam. Like they throw in too many MacGuffins. There's the fucking dragon army. There's this mystical crown. There's the fucking jade jaguar with the time powers in it. There's the mystical hourglass. There are like 5 MacGuffins they throw in the span of about 4 chapters. My favorite thing that they keep escalating over time is the number of scenes where multiple characters are shooting different multicolored beams out of their hands at a thing.
At a thing, yes.
I think, I'm trying to find it, I think it finally culminates in a scene where like 6 different characters are all shooting their color of energy at a thing at the same time,
at the portals,
trying to either destroy it or save it at the same time. So crazy. Where
this goes eventually, and this is what was going to be the kind of follow up to my Liu Kang question was. They realize that there are multiple timelines, infinite timelines at this point, not just Liu Kang's rebooted timeline that he was in charge of. And so they go and they recruit the time. In these multiple timelines, there's a timekeeper that is basically the main character they're recruiting from each timeline, but they don't have glowy eyes.
I believe the multiverse stuff at the end that happens, or toward the end, I believe every character that steps out of a different timeline to join them is the Titan of that timeline.
They should have given them all glowy eyes.
If I'm not mistaken, that would have been pretty good.
Because at some point it's like, I want all the glowy eyes, fighting all the glowy eyes.
Well, now, actually, remember, though, Liu Kang has glowy eyes because he became Raiden, or because Raiden merged himself with Liu Kang.
They're not all necessarily demigods.
Yeah, so those are actually Raiden's electric eyes.
Oh, I see. Those are particular to him.
Yeah, but then how these other characters also became Keepers of Time, who knows?
Well, the thing they say is that, when the thing was torn asunder, it could have been not just Liu Kang and Shang Tsung in that final battle. There were an exponential number of possibilities of who could be the person that was in that fight, depending on choices that were made, et cetera, et cetera. It's time bullshit. Like, you just kind of have to write it off to that.
So they kick the door open for time bullshit. Yeah. And multiverse bullshit, which to me just feels like they spill the Mortal Kombat all over the floor.
Totally.
I get a little lost in it.
And the thing is, I think I would have been more amenable to what they were doing if the final confrontations felt like there is a real, like there's real stakes, there's a real power. Like, if I'm really fighting my ass through these things, these various versions of other characters where it's like Sonya Blade with Kano's eye and fucking
we gotta
Lizard,
fucking
Garrus and all that shit.
But
my point is that, like, that fight is boring. Whole presentation of it and everything that like, once you get over the novelty of, okay, here's your new remix character, and a couple of cameos that I think are pretty funny, like the part where the combat kids show up for 5 seconds and then just get murked immediately.
Oh, dude, that was incredible.
That was great. I will give them that. But the actual fights, they're 1 round each, and it just keeps going, and it's just not fun.
I think the novelty of all the mashup characters absolutely carries that run up the pyramid. Like, what happens at the top is a complete whiff. There's like almost no conclusion to it.
None.
But the reason there's a trophy for playing through Chapter 15 twice is because they made a shitload of these mashup characters.
Yeah.
And you get different ones every time. Like, I went on YouTube and like I still am seeing ones I've never seen before. I don't know how many they made, but like, they have a Scorpion Kung Lao mashup named Stung Lao.
Yep, I saw that one.
Like, you fight Ninja Mime at one point, the Sonya Kano mashup is like the best thing in there. Like, it's so ridiculous.
I enjoyed seeing those. I thought they were very, very, very silly.
But as a final confrontation?
If they hadn't messed up the climax, I think it would have been a fun run up. And I was glad they just did 1 round each, and you're just kind of running through those things.
I think it's better that you're just rapid fire going through like stupid character after stupid character. Like, that whole thing, I was just like kind of dying laughing.
But then they just do that for Shang Tsung too.
But the problem is at the top, the fight at the top is like completely boilerplate. And there's kind of hardly an ending.
Like, I found that Chronica fight to be frustrating and annoying, but at least it felt like a final boss fight, you know? Like,
Yes.
it felt like a real conclusion to that whole conflict, whereas this is, you beat Shang Tsung, game over. That's it.
Like what do they do with him? Do they knock him in the pit? Or...
They don't do
remember.
any, like, so...
Oh, no, that's right, actually. All that happens is they beat him and Quan Chi, and Liu Kang just uses his time magic to, like, evaporate them into like sands of time, and that's it. Like, I was like, man, that's it.
So who did you play as in that final confrontation?
I played as Liu Kang because I didn't realize I was actually going to be taking control of a different.
That's exactly what I thought. I was like, oh, Liu Kang is the canonical hero in these stories. I'm going to play my first one as Liu Kang, and then you play as some bootleg Liu Kang.
It's kind of funny. I can't remember if they address that or not when they get to the top. Do they?
It's really.
Or do they just call each other Liu Kang without even like calling out that they're both the same person?
So
it really feels like dial a dialogue tree at that point.
Yeah, because the thing is, they let you choose from any of the playable characters that are unlocked, and so you can go in and do it with whatever character you want. I picked Geras because I was like, okay, I kind of want to see that dynamic as you're going along. And, you know, it seems like the dialogue changes a little bit to shift with, you know, whatever it is you're doing as you're going up the tower. But so the thing that was really wild to me was like, okay, at the end, once you get rid of Shang Tsung and evil Quan Chi and all that, and they suck the fucking time sand out of them, the universe that they're in, the timeline that you're in, is supposed to start collapsing. And the way it ends, at least in the one that I saw, was that, you know, it's like Liu Kang thanks Geras and says, I hope to see you again one day.
Yeah.
And then it just cuts to that scene in the restaurant.
That's kind of what it does with Liu Kang as well.
Yeah, I think that's the same for everybody.
So why wouldn't he go see Geras again? What happened there that makes it so it is impossible for him to maybe see him again, considering it seems like Liu Kang just shows up back in Earthrealm and everything's fine?
It's other timeline Geras.
Can I ask a question here? This is, again, revealing my Marvel ignorance.
Yeah.
Is that scene in the restaurant here? Is that your, like, shawarma scene?
Oh, interesting. Huh.
It's like, I want to say it definitely could be, but it doesn't play out quite the same way as the shawarma scene, which is mostly just them sitting in silence in a ruined restaurant after a big battle. But, you know, I mean, they set up the stuff with Madame Bo in the restaurant in the beginning of the game, so it's not totally surprising they end up there. I just don't understand, like, what was the actual threat at the end when the universe started collapsing? Like, what was Liu Kang worried about? It seemed like they just teleported out of there and it's like, cool, we're good. And then the Havoc people show up in that same universe, which is still there.
I don't
know.
I thought maybe everybody had to get back into their own timelines, like the fabric of the timelines was pulling apart, but maybe. I don't know. They don't explain it. That's just me.
Yeah.
There's also a lot of dead bodies on the ground.
Yeah, there's all the corpses are still there on the pyramid. So,
and a little bit with Jax, I will say, is well, brutal.
That was pretty rough for sure. I other than the actual conclusion of chapter 15 being a non-event, I thought 15 was really clever.
Mm-hmm.
Like I had a good time playing Process of Elimination as I played through the last like 6 chapters in one sitting, and every one chapter closer to the ending, it's like, all right, that character's down. Who's going to be next? Who's going to be the last character? Like who's going to be in the last game? It was Liu Kang. Like who's going to be who's the big, you know, in Aftermath they got around that by letting you pick. And in this one, I was like, okay. And then Liu Kang turns out to be 14, and you're like, all right, well, he's the god, and you just burned him on the second to last chapter. What the hell are you going to do now? And then they just let you play anybody. I was like, all right, okay, that's at least a different idea than you've done before.
Yeah.
And then, like, you know, all the mashup characters are ridiculous and fun. I like that last chapter right up until they do nothing with it.
Yeah.
Like, it's really just once you get to the top and just have a perfunctory fight with the bad guy, and then he just literally evaporates, and then they just pal around in a restaurant for a few minutes, and it's over. I don't know.
It's such a weak way to deliver on what you are setting up with this supposedly all-powerful Shang Tsung, who has bent the entire will of this timeline supposedly to his power, is that all you get is this dumb pyramid fight, which I understand is a callback to something, but, like, it just feels like such a waste for what you were supposedly setting up there. And it makes, frankly, this Shang Tsung seem like a total chump, because as powerful as he's supposedly supposed to be, like, you just wail on him for a round and then it's over. And it's like, what was the point of this?
Yeah, and as much as I like the voice actor they got for Shang Tsung, and he's doing an incredible impression, I really didn't feel the same level of like grandiosity as the one from Aftermath.
No.
Granted, I mean, like you can't out carry Hiroyuki Tagawa himself.
No.
You know what I mean? Like you can't top that, but I still felt like the character didn't feel like the same conniving, ultimate scheming wizard guy from the last game. By the time we got here, he just kind of folds, right?
Yeah, he just folds. And I also didn't think the face turn of your Shang Tsung and the Quan Chi stuff was really that effective either, because they sort of played up. It's like, okay, now we forged a different deadly alliance, but it's like it's just for kind of a chapter, and it doesn't really pay off into anything interesting.
Yeah. I needed a little more at the end here.
Yeah,
or a lot more.
I think I would have been. I really like this Shang Tsung, by the way. I think he's a lot of fun, and I think a lot of it goes to the animators and the motion capture. Like the performance capture is just fantastic. But I think I would have preferred, and this is armchair narrative writing, or I don't make the game, but I think I would have preferred more of the angle of there's a bigger power, because there's always a bigger power in Mortal Kombat, right? A bigger power is keeping the timelines on a path, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like no matter how much Liu Kang wants to reset the timeline, there's some corrective force that's always going to push it down this lane of Mortal Kombat. And that's what drove Chronica, mad. And this is the way it is, versus the multiverse stuff. I think I would have enjoyed some other cosmic thing that is either bigger than a Titan, whatever it is, that keeps forcing this Mortal Kombat universe down this horrible path of endless fighting. Because the multiverse stuff, maybe if they had gone into a way of like, oh, they're collapsing, they're weaving, they're doing this thing at the end, and left it as like, well, we have a lot of work to do. Instead, they kind of just leave it to, what is that mode called, where you bounce around inside the different maps?
Oh, the invasions mode.
Yeah, they kind of like leave it open for the invasions mode. Like, hey, the timelines are leaking, basically. We have to go be a plumber here. Versus, it almost ends like a first movie that they're not sure if they're going to make a sequel to, which this is not that. You need to end this with a serious cliffhanger, which I think the Havoc stuff just isn't that threatening.
And that's, I think, where I come out on the inclusion of all those PS2 era characters and kind of throwing them into the mix here, is that I was hoping that they would find good angles for those characters to make them feel as important or vital as the ones that you've known pretty much since the first trilogy. And I just, with the exception of Ashra, who I think is good in the scenes they give her and kind of gives a little bit of justification for her existence, they kind of abandon her too, the way they do everyone else. And I just don't think the way they are inserted into this storyline makes them feel like they are as vital as, a Liu Kang or a Johnny Cage or any of that. Like, they just feel like a lot of knowing winks to people who are the most hardcore Mortal Kombat fans and know that when Asher puts on that big dumb hat, that's a reference to something, which I had to look up because I did not remember that Asher had a big dumb hat originally, but she did. And I just, that does very little for me unless you're willing to reshape these characters into something more meaningful, and I just don't think they get there with most of them.
I also thought this was going to open up into a create a character mode, but at the end, where you're like mixing and matching powers. I was kind of shocked when it didn't.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of got the same vibe. I think all those mashup characters are handmade, though. In fact,
they are.
I know they are, but it does kind of make you wonder for a minute, like, are they just going to take all the limiters off and let you do whatever you want?
Maybe in some DLC or like post Mortal Kombat 1. I'm kind of down on where it went, but I enjoyed the ride for the most part.
It's a fun enough ride.
It was up and down for me. Like, parts of it were pretty slow, and then it gets very messy with all the multiverse stuff. Like, it definitely has its moments, but I found it way less coherent overall than 11 and way less satisfying.
And formulaic, like, in a way that even though they have been doing this formula for like 4 games now, like, I think that the formula on its own is not strong enough now to carry you if you don't have a good enough story. And like, it's two things. I think that the reason I'm so critical of this is because I think they did such a good job by and large on the previous trilogy and the way they shape those stories and reset everything. But I think here it just does not feel like they have as much to work with that is interesting or good or, novel to do with these characters. And I think the formula itself is just now starting to feel a little bit tired. Like, I got a little bored fighting a guy, getting a one-liner, getting a cutscene, fighting a guy, getting a one-liner, getting a cutscene. Like, it's just a little too cookie-cutter now. I'd like to see them try and branch out and do something a little different structurally next time, too.
Yeah, I think they might need that, actually. Like, I don't mind the format, but I don't know that they know what else to do with it.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's the problem, is I don't think they know where to take this. Like, I think this is, like, actually kind of a larger problem with, like, a lot of mainstream genre writing these days, right? Like, I feel like they are dealing with both reboot creep and power creep at this point, Like, power creep has been a thing since the first game. It's like, the first game had one bad guy, then the next game had the bad guy who was behind that bad guy, and then 2 games later, you got another evil wizard above him. And now it's just gone up into tiers of godhood, Like, you had demigods and then elder gods and now titans, and also they've rebooted 4 times. It's like, you can't keep doing that stuff forever.
No.
Like, and it loses its impact, if you do it too much. But that's the corner they've written themselves into, and I don't know how they get out of it.
Well, and also, I think when you call your game Mortal Kombat 1, you are signaling to an audience that this is where everything starts, and this is where everything is going to branch out from here on out. And if you're going to do that, you need to make sure that all those branches are compelling and that people want to go along for the ride beyond what you're doing here. I mean, look, I'm more than willing to play the next Mortal Kombat story, and I'm looking forward to it. But I can't say that what they have established here as a foundation is nearly as compelling to me as what they did in the last trilogy.
Yeah, I'm definitely with that. I mean, like, if they do an Aftermath type expansion for this, I'll be there day one. Like, I'll kind of show up day one for whatever they do narratively with this, but...
And on top of that, the game's fun. The thing is, like, I'm glad the game is still a lot of fun because I will keep playing it outside of the story mode. I'm having a very good time with it. It feels weird to spend this much time talking about a fighting game story mode, but that is where they got themselves with especially that last trilogy. And it's just unfortunate. I feel like I came away from this one kind of disappointed.
Yeah, I mean, it's a testament to how good their story modes have been that we're even having this conversation. I don't know. It pains me to say this, but I feel like this overall package is definitely kind of underwhelming compared to 11.
Yeah.
Like I've been having some fun online. Like, I've been doing okay online, but like, I've played some invasions. I played the towers. I've gone and unlocked some cosmetics. I've done daily and weekly quests. I've kind of been doing most of what there is to do in this. It just feels like a thinner package than 11 did at launch by kind of a lot to me.
Yeah.
Not only did I enjoy that story mode more, but like, the crypt in that thing was incredible as a kind of like progression meta mode. Like, the Towers of Time were a super interesting, repeatable activity right out of the gate in that game. Like, I felt like the gear system was more fleshed out. Like you've only got one loadout in this, you kind of go set your skin and your gear and that's it. And you have to just kind of go back in there and change stuff out when you're bored of it. Like, you can't be like, hey, I want 3 templates. Like, here's my, different types of character. Like, it just feels like the feature set is a little bit lacking, and the extra modes are not as exciting or interesting as they have been in the past.
Yeah.
The fighting seems quite good. Like I said, I'm enjoying playing it online for sure.
What do you think of the Cameo edition?
People are definitely making a lot of use of it out there. We kind of talked about it last week. Like, people are finding a ton of crazy synergies where you can extend an extra 20% of damage out by turning this combo into, or, putting a launcher in the middle of this combo and keeping it going and stuff like that. Like, I just don't have the technical inclination to experiment with that stuff and like find out what those are. Like, maybe I'll go read about some and try a few of them. But like, you think about the exponential increase in complexity when you say not only do you have to pick a character and learn all their stuff, but now you can pair them with any other cameo.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
It's for the competitive heads. Like, that's what it's designed for.
Totally. Like, in the FGC parlance, like, labbing combos of characters and cameos is just going to take forever, which maybe is what they wanted in the competitive scene. I don't know. I think it's okay. Like, the cameos are interesting. I mean, it's definitely a fun way to get more classic characters in there and some extra fatalities and stuff like that. But on a technical level, in terms of what you do with it in the fighting, I haven't done a lot with it.
I think I liked 11's slightly more geared toward just creating different versions of the same character, Like that was their big system, was like, here are the different
stuff.
templates, you know, kind of mix and match a little bit. I think that to me was a little more compelling, but I like what the cameos can potentially bring on the competitive scene. But that's purely me as a viewer, because that will make Evo fun. It does not because I'm going to get really good at this stuff.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you there. I mean, the cameos also, though, enhance an aspect of these games for the last few games, or maybe all of them, but especially the last few, where it's just the game's gone so juggle heavy. And so, like, I'm already seeing it. I mean, it's kind of a hilarious cliche, and I find it kind of endearing. Like, I think the cliche about modern Mortal Kombat games in the first few days of release is, like, you go online and you fight people that, like, barely know what they're doing, or are not even like doing the fundamentals at a high level, and then all of a sudden they'll bust out a like 8-second long 40% damage combo on you because the training is very good at teaching you those.
Yeah.
Like if you go into the practice and challenge stuff with the characters, they will teach you a bunch of combos that will net you a crap load of damage, and if you just keep your opponent in the air long enough, and like it's kind of funny to run into that out there, but I don't know that I love it on the receiving end. Like it just kind of, like, if you can execute one of those combos efficiently, then you just get a bunch of free damage. You know, like if you can just get them in the right spot and then hit the right buttons at the right timing, it's just like a third of their health bar is gone, and like that's just it kind of breaks up the flow of the matches a little bit to me. It's like, oh, well, I'm airborne. I guess I'm just going to get juggled for the next 8 hits until I come back down and can do something again.
Can you cameo your way out of those? I feel like
there are some ways to do that, and like, yes, you're right. I have not been using that enough.
That you know, block stuff that you can do with the cameos.
What is it, like forward and block, I think, is how you break out of a combo. But I think that takes meter, right?
Yes, it does.
So like, you can do some of that.
I am absolutely no good at doing that.
I mostly do it by accident so far.
I've only seen it done against me.
Yeah, like I need to get better about it. Like even the computer will do it against you occasionally. Like you're not wrong that is actually a way to address that issue. And it's not, you know, it's certainly not game breaking. Like I'm still having fun with it online. I'm actually kind of like scouring, like, all right, who's the good character to play right now? Like it sounds like Lee May might be kind of broken. I might give her a shot.
I got real good with Reptile, I will say. That is not a thing I have ever done in any other previous game. I've never been a great Reptile player, but this version of him I feel like is snappy in a way that works really well for my tendencies.
Yeah, like the fighting feels good. Like it moves well for sure. The only other thing I can think of real quick to say about it, I want to give a shout out to the technical execution of Chapter 15. Like not only, I mean, you know, whatever load times almost don't exist now, so getting you in and out of all those fights is kind of par for the course, although it is still impressive. The main thing to me is that they pair your choice of character with the CG in a way that is basically seamless. Like going all the way back to like Final Fantasy VII, there is a long history of putting real-time 3D graphics over top of FMV and having it look like shit. So for them to have been able to take your selected character, who has to be a real-time because they certainly did not put 15 versions of the FMV on in the install, like I thought that was really impressive that they were able to blend the real-time stuff that you choose with the big flashy cinematic stuff, and you basically can't tell.
I couldn't tell. I didn't even think about that until you mentioned it now.
Yeah, it's. I think that is to be commended that they did a good job with that.
I mean, NetherRealm has been pushing the boundaries of technical stuff for this, you know, their storytelling and their fighting games for, you know, some time now, and I feel like they've gotten those games to a really amazing place in terms of, you know, both gameplay responsiveness and how their cinematic productions generally look and feel and move. Again, my issue with this one mostly has to do with storytelling and the overall game feeling a little thin, like you said, Brad. But I think, you know, as a fighter, it's still a hell of a lot of fun, at the very least. And I'm still having a very good time with it.
This would be a lot to ask. But if it had escalated to a point where at the end of this game, through those portals are fucking Lego people, Batman, you know, every Warner Brothers
that would be
property,
funny, at least.
That would have been like, okay, you went to a place that was like, that's ridiculous. Even if it was just background stuff happening where you saw like Lego Gandalf fighting somebody like in the background, would have escalated to a place where I felt like, okay, this is really wild. This is really imaginative and new. A Wright's nightmare, of course, but look, you're Warner Brothers, you do what you need to do. By the end of that game, what is the Havoc cliffhanger? I'm sorry I missed all the action.
I guess we're fighting Chaos Realm next time. I don't know.
Or like he's basically like, let's do this again. Like, let's make another multi-dimensional battle again.
Yeah,
like,
fuck it. Why not?
Yeah, I don't know. And like, I think all the stuff you mentioned, Alex, with like, hey, the timeline's collapsing or whatever it is, and then we'll just cut to it's fine. Like,
yeah, there's a lot of dead bodies, but it's fine.
I don't know. I think it could have been a little cleaner. I think I'm personally, Brad, I know you probably haven't experienced it too much, but I am saturated on multiverse stuff. So much.
I'm with you. I think when it's done well, I can still stomach it. You know, like, I don't mind all the weird stuff they did that they played around with, like in the last Spider-Verse movie. I thought that stuff was mostly pretty fun, even though, you know, again, I'm about as burned out on this shit as you are. I think my problem is it feels like they came to this mode with a predetermined conclusion in mind and then tried to write their way into it. They didn't really let the characters breathe or find a way to kind of just let the story dictate where they go. They're just like, no, we want a big endgame battle that is like the Armageddon thing on the fucking pyramid. And also there's multiverses now, so figure out how to get us there. And it just... Somehow they ended up the figuring out how to get us there part was the most interesting, and once they got there, it was not interesting anymore.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think if the last like 5 minutes of the game had been way stronger, I could pretty much forgive the shortcomings that come before that. But there's just nothing there.
It's just weak shit at the end. I'm sorry.
I think we're just at a media point where people we don't let franchises go, and the multiverse stuff is just a mechanic to have these franchises go on indefinitely while doing nostalgia pulls, right? Like,
100%, yes.
It is just like 30, 40, 50, 60 plus year old franchises sometimes that are like, what do? We need to appeal to a new crowd and an old crowd. And somebody fairly early on, I don't know if it was Star Trek, who was the first, who fired the first multiverse shot here to bring in the nostalgia play. But
I mean comics have been doing it. Comics have been doing it forever, right?
Yeah, decades and decades.
I mean, maybe comic fans or somebody listening to this can speak to this, but like, is the current multiverse stuff just an outgrowth of all the what if stuff that has happened over the years, like what if issues in comics? And I think, weren't they doing some of that in Marvel TV at some point? Like, did the powers that be look at all the what if stuff and just say, hey, what if we just made that the main storyline?
No. Okay, so I'm trying to trace all this stuff back.
Good luck, Alex. Yeah.
I do think there was multiverse and time nonsense in the Marvel universe before they started doing what ifs, if I remember correctly.
I definitely believe that. I'm more wondering like what led to it becoming the thing that everybody is doing now.
I think it's one of those things where one or two successful properties messed around with this stuff, and then everyone decided, well, this is a really easy direction for us to push our franchises as well. And I couldn't. I'd have to sit here and think about who was really at the forefront of that stuff this time around. I want to say it was fucking Rick and Morty, honestly, but like, it's just. I mean, this isn't even the only multiverse Warner Brothers has fucked around with this year, because that whole Flash movie is basically about that shit, to the point where they brought in a CG version of the never actually made Nicolas Cage Superman in that movie as a cameo. Wow. That's the kind of bullshit they were pulling from in that multiverse.
I'm telling you, it's a great way for these super old franchises, or let's say an easier way to hit new stuff and hit old nostalgia bones at the same time, and trying to feel like you have a new story with old stuff. And it just feels like we've done it so many times now.
Yes.
That maybe we just need new franchises. Maybe we just have to...
Or maybe Mortal Kombat just needs to figure out a way to evolve that does not involve the universe resetting over and over again, or timelines branching out into a infinitesimal number of directions. Like, what if there was just a tournament that kept happening?
And new characters?
They
tried that. I feel like they tried that with 4 and stuff.
Yeah, and they also tried it with 10.
Yeah.
With the Combat Kids.
Yeah.
And I have to say, that moment at the end of Chapter 15 when Katana just wastes all of the Combat Kids in short order kind of felt like some weird meta-commentary somebody at NetherRealm was making on those characters. I don't know.
Which is weird, because I actually like those characters. Like, I don't understand the problem.
Going back to X, I Granted, I haven't played X in years, and I just played a little bit of it this weekend. Like, I didn't love the combat kids in that game, but I thought Cassie Cage and Jackie Briggs were both great in 11. Like, I thought those characters also, they weirdly just dispensed with Takeda and Kung Jin, like they're not even in 11, but Cassie and Jackie I thought were like really came into their own as characters in 11.
Cassie Cage in particular, I think, is the best of that spate of new characters, and I think the dynamic between her and her parents is one of the more interesting things they do in 11, despite the Ronda Rousey voice acting.
Yes, like there's just more pathos in 11. There's more like genuine character meat to sink your teeth into in that game. Like the idea, like minor 11 spoiler, like the idea of Cassie Cage watching her mother die, in fact, leaving her mother to die that morning, and then having the 30 years younger version of her mother come through a time portal that afternoon.
Yep.
And like having to deal with hanging out with your young mom who just died. It's like, that's a super interesting idea.
Totally. And I think that's another case where I feel like what they do with it makes good and pays off in a way in that story that makes it feel like that was not just a tossed off gimmick. Like they make it part of the story that feels like it matters.
Yeah, like I don't think there's anything in this game that is quite at that level. I mean, there is some good character stuff, but none of it pays off that well.
No.
MK1.
Yeah.
You think the next one's just Mortal Kombat 2?
I don't know.
Because the first game is Mortal Kombat,
Part 2.
right?
First of all, leave that name alone.
Yeah.
Please call it something else.
So there was never, just for me, or for anybody else listening who doesn't quite know, there was never a Mortal Kombat 1, right? There's just Mortal Kombat.
It was just Mortal Kombat.
So this is a unique name in a database.
Technically,
Mortal Kombat 2.
Again, if you put that into Google, it's still not going to help you.
No.
That's what it is. Mortal Kombat 2 is one of my all-time favorite games. Please just let it be.
Yeah,
so is it Mortal Kombat 1 Part 2?
Do whatever you want with the game. Just please call it something else.
Just give it just go, like, if we're bringing up all these PS2 era ones, like, fine, just go back to the subtitle. Don't call it Mortal Kombat number. Call it Mortal Kombat dumb word. I'm fine with that.
I would be fine with that, for sure. I don't know where the like solidity of NetherRealm and Warner Brothers games is at these days. You know, like the whole idea, or the theory was they went straight from 11 to this instead of doing Injustice 3 because they were worried about getting sold off and not having access to the DC rights anymore.
Mm-hmm.
That's not confirmed, but remember, like Warner Brothers was shopping around their games division around that time, and that's why everybody, because normally they go MK Injustice is the pattern they've been doing. So I don't know where they're at with that stuff, and whether they do just move straight on to another MK game after this, or maybe things are settled enough that they actually do another Injustice now. In which case it's going to be a very long time before another MK.
Well, let me just throw this possibility out there. They just introduced multiple timelines and multiverses and all that shit. If you're going to do a Mortal Kombat versus DC sequel,
they absolutely could do MK v DC 2.
You have now just given yourself the easiest, the most softball underhand toss way to go about that.
In this version, in Mortal Kombat 1, the multiple timelines were created when Liu Kang defeated Kronika, or were they always in the background?
That's their explanation.
That they were created at that fight?
The timeline was torn apart.
Okay. I thought that only happened when he fought Shang Tsung in the revised version of 11, I think is what they said.
That's what they say, yes.
But it wasn't like there are multiple timelines forever and ever. This is just splintered the timeline.
No, I think Eurus or somebody explicitly says like there's only ever been one serial timeline from one to the next until now, and now there are endless ones at the same time.
Okay. So it's not like there's been parallel timelines this whole time.
No.
So there could be
until we find out there actually was, because they could just go back on that if they felt like it.
Could be a path to reuniting the timelines, right? Like that could be a story arc somewhere. Of trying to bring it all back under control, or we could just have multiple timelines. Anyway, Mortal Kombat 1.
Yeah, it's interesting. They went for some stuff.
It's a fun ride.
I just wish it paid off better. Like I know what the studio and this team is capable of, and I just feel like this is not their strongest effort on that front.
Yeah, and it also just didn't feel like a page turner the way that 11 did to me, where I was constantly excited to see what was going to happen next. I feel like there's just like there's too much training of new characters in this. There's too much like standing around in Sindel's court just talking about the tournament type stuff, you know. Like there were just some kind of long stretches that were not much is happening.
I think my favorite part, again, not a huge Mortal Kombat person, but my favorite part of all of the reboot stuff from all of the modern Mortal Kombat was seeing the arc of the development of the Cyber Ninja. I think was my favorite. So was that in 10? Where they introduced like
the Lin Kuei factory?
Yeah,
well,
where
the very first cyborg ninjas were in 3.
No.
I mean, like in the last reboot timeline,
in this rebooted era.
Where they're like, the Lin Kuei, right. Like we're going to invest in technology and like, you know.
I do feel like a lot of that was in X, if I'm remembering correctly.
Okay.
In fact, I was reminded. I think Sub-Zero was a cyborg for a while, and then somehow got turned back into a human again.
Yes,
because
you play as human Cyrax, right?
Which game is that?
There's human Cyrax, and I think you maybe see human Sector for a second, but they're like on opposing sides, if I remember correctly.
I think that's either 9 or X. Yeah, that stuff was interesting. Like that comes around in 11 too, because you find Cyborg Cyrax, and he clearly is absolutely miserable living as a robot.
And the whole factory is in one of the games. Like that stuff was interesting. I think that was more interesting than the stuff they were doing here. But again, I probably missed a lot of things. I did notice the scar, Scorpion gets, and it's like, oh, okay, that's the Sub-Zero scar, and I'm sure there's a billion other things I missed, like the hat thing you mentioned.
I think a little of that stuff goes a long way, and it really feels like every chapter, especially in the middle, is just a punctuation of, hey, here's how they got signature thing.
Havoc, I didn't know Havoc, but when I looked him up, I was like, oh, right, he's got a zombie face.
I don't think I want to know Havoc.
I think you're going to have to know Havoc.
I don't want to know Havoc.
They're really building up Havoc.
Give me Kotal Khan back. If you're going to be a Kotal, give me Kotal Khan back. At least that guy was fun. Well, fun, but stern.
I like Kotal Khan.
Yeah.
Who's Kotal Khan?
He's like the dude who takes over for Shao Kahn in Outworld, and is sort of like the leader of Outworld. And he's definitely the leader of Outworld in most of the last one, I think.
Yeah, he's pretty prominent in 11.
Yeah.
He's an Oshtek. I don't know what race that is, but I guess they're one of the races of Outworld. Yes, he becomes Khan, and then he gets his back broken by Shao Kahn.
Oh, I vaguely remember that. Okay.
And then Katana becomes Katana Khan.
Yes.
Thought the moment he said Katana Khan was hilarious.
Yeah.
And amazing.
They've done some amazing things with these stories. I just don't think this is one of them.
Yeah.
I think it's good, but it's pretty uneven.
That's gonna do it for our Mortal Kombat 1 spoiler fest. Stick around. We're gonna come back. We're gonna talk about some other games. We'll be right back. And we are back, and it's time for some other video games. Now, we started with the Mortal Kombat stuff because I wanted to make sure that if any spoiler stuff happened there, hopefully it's before all the chapter markers get completely thrown out of sync due to some ads and stuff like that. But what I really want to hear about, Brad Shoemaker, is your time with Alan Wake 2.
Yes. I went and played like 2 hours of Alan Wake 2.
What's
in
going
a
on
hotel suite with Thomas Puha and Sam Lake of Remedy.
Really?
Yes.
How was that?
Not at all stressful.
Yeah.
Having them watch me play it. Alan Wake 2 looks pretty interesting, pretty ambitious, pretty, I can't say incredible or whatever because we haven't played the full game. It looks way more impressive than what I was expecting. I'm going to say that.
What were you expecting?
I don't know what I was expecting. I think my impressions are mostly colored by memories of Alan Wake 1, which I don't know about you guys, but like when I think back on Alan Wake 1, what I mostly remember is a like kind of interesting third-person shooter, but with shooting that kind of wore out its welcome. And also it was quite linear.
Yeah,
you know?
A lot of finding thermoses is what I remember.
You just kind of shot your way through that game, and like it was mostly propelled by like the writing, the story, the imagery, you know, like there's a lot of weird reality bending, psychological imagery and stuff in that game. And like that was what made it good.
That's fair.
They've said this is a survival horror game in the marketing, like that's no secret. Like they've harped on that. Like you definitely see that in the stuff that I played, but there's also like kind of some adventure game elements. Like it's much less linear and there's much more to do than just shoot stuff in this that felt kind of surprising to me. Like I remarked on that like 5 minutes into the demo. I was just like, oh, you've done this and this. Like that's not what I was expecting after the first game. And Sam Lake actually said like, yeah, we like took all the lessons from Control that we learned in making that game and put them in this, or, you know, they're drawing on that stuff. So there are 2 playable characters. There's Alan Wake and there is Saga Anderson, I believe is her name, who's the FBI agent who has come to like the Bright Falls area to investigate some stuff. And if I understood correctly, you kind of choose when to swap back and forth between those characters. You can kind of interweave their stories. Like you do it at specific points in the environment. You have to find like whatever it is, a portal or some bloodstain or something. Like you can't just switch whenever you want. But I think they're within some restrictions. You can kind of be like, you know, I'm going to go back to Saga's story now. I've had enough Alan for a while.
Do you know if those stories are happening concurrent, parallel, or did one happen before the other?
It's hard to say because Alan Wake is not in the real world in this game. He is in the dark place.
Okay.
So Saga's in the real world. She's in Bright Falls, and there's a couple of other little towns around there also that you go to. And that was the first thing they started me off in Bright Falls, or in that area that I noticed, was you're just in a town walking around talking to people. And you can like wander into a karaoke bar, and there's a pretty good scene in there. And there's just like people hanging out doing their blue collar jobs that you can go up and talk to, and you're investigating stuff. Like they're really emphasizing the idea of investigation in this game, particularly with her, because obviously she's an FBI agent. Like Alan's stuff is a lot weirder, but it's a lot of like going through dialogue trees looking for clues, because you're like trying to find a certain person or trying to find a place, and you're straight up interrogating people or interviewing them, trying to find information. But the place that really manifests, and they have shown this before, but it was like playing it that really got my head around it, is you can warp into both characters. You can warp into like I don't know what to call it. It's not a hub. It's kind of a sanctuary, but it's not, because the game doesn't pause when you do it. And they explicitly say like, hey, you might not want to do this in the middle of combat. But in Saga's case, it's called the Mind Place, which is just this like, not a log cabin. It was this kind of like rustic looking environment with like tables and like a corkboard wall type thing. Basically a place to do a detective work. And you straight up are like sticking sticky notes on the wall and photos of things and like laying out the case that you're trying to solve and like answering questions that you've put up and stuff. And like doing that unlocks more stuff to do in the world, you know, like it'll be like, I'm going to go in there and profile the person I just interviewed that I just met. Like think about what their deal is, and that'll unlock like new dialogue options you can go back into the game and do.
Okay.
Is it on a structure like you got like a big check mark if you put everything in the right order and then it unlocks something?
Don't know. I mean, you'll very clearly see new options pop up on the sort of like layout of the case that you've got going when you've uncovered something. I think they kind of make it clear that way. But do you mean like, I've got some footage of it in front of me that I'm looking at. Do you mean like, does it kind of give you like slots for things you haven't uncovered yet?
Like,
I believe it does do that.
Okay.
I'm trying to find some actual footage of that.
Like you have 10 things, 5 of them will go on the board.
Yeah,
with the right
and a lot
5 in.
And every time you open up new avenues of the investigation, it'll like take the form of a question, you know? So you kind of can see like, oh, there's questions here that don't have answers to them yet.
Okay.
So you kind of know there's more you need to do, and not all of it is required, I believe.
Okay.
Like some of it is optional, just kind of extra information to uncover. And like that might open up optional areas or something. In the real world, at least with Saga, there are multiple towns you can go between, and you can kind of just fast travel between them. So it's like, not only is there like non-combat, like investigation type stuff, but you actually can go between the different towns. And they said there's like side stuff and non-linear stuff to do. Back and forth, which that was kind of the Control comparison they made, was, you know, Control was not a fully linear game that had some side stuff and backtracking and so forth.
Right.
So there's definitely some of that. Alan's version of that is that he's in the dark place, which is basically just like a really grungy noir New York City now, because all of his novels are set in, or a lot of his novels are set in New York City. So it's just kind of turned into that as he has lived there. That version of New York looks incredible.
Okay.
Like just the tech that they've got going for this, like there's a lot going on with Alan's gameplay, actually. Like the look of that New York City and the Alan character and all that stuff is like some of the best I've seen in a video game, which I know is very high praise.
That is.
But then on top of that, and they've talked about this, there is a ton of FMV in the Alan stuff. I don't know if there's any in the Saga stuff, But they kind of made headlines when they announced they were like, oh, we're integrating FMV with the 3D stuff in Alan Wake 2.
Yeah.
Like that stuff is extremely impressive. Like you'll just kind of know I can't really characterize that until you see it. But the way that it both cuts back and forth between video and 3D, but more to the point, what they do with integrating FMV elements into the 3D world is like, it's extremely impressive, like very well handled. It's not like, I'm not talking about like in-game TVs with FMV on them. I'm talking like spectral shit going on.
Okay.
Where there is video of actors taking place in front of you while you're playing the game in a way that's just like...
It doesn't look out of place? It's
very inventive and very well done and executed. Like
okay.
I was like super impressed with that aspect of this. Alan's stuff, like he has the writer's room instead of the mind place, which is basically just kind of like a big empty room with a typewriter. And like what you're doing with Alan is kind of rewriting scenes of the world. Like you're basically going into the writer's room and rewriting the area around you and then going back in and reality has changed.
Okay.
And you're basically changing the environment to access new events, like new pathways, new parts of the world, kind of solve mysteries of your own there in a way. I didn't finish the Alan sequence, so I didn't quite see where that stuff goes. There's another aspect of Alan, which is that I know this is a lot. It was kind of a lot to get your head around. He can steal light from certain places, like like a big like spotlight or like a street light or whatever. He can like
suck it up,
steal that light, yeah, and carry it with him and deploy it again later in a place where he can change what's around him with that. And so you can like pop your light out and completely change the type of like change the room that you're in or whatever. Which again reveals new paths, like visually changes what things look like in a really interesting way, but also like a very abstract, kind of hard to get your head around kind of way of like, okay, I need to go in here and change it to a different type of room and then double back through the door and now I'll be in a different place because I was in a different room a minute ago.
Sure.
But then change it back again type stuff, you know?
We have to keep getting your light source and figuring it out.
Yes, it's definitely gonna be some puzzle solving, it seems like, of changing reality multiple times and kind of folding back in on itself in ways that are maybe a little abstract to get your head around. The Alan stuff seems really cool and very like dreamy and kind of incorporeal, you know, like there's a lot of like what's real, what's not here. I mean, none of it is real because you're in the dark place, but like what is tangible here, what's subject to change at any moment, like what can I change myself by rewriting what's around me, you know? Did
he even have a weapon in the stuff you played?
Yeah, they both. It's a shooter, but it's definitely a survival horror shooter. It's not a just kind of third person straightforward shooter like the last game.
Yeah.
Like resource scarcity definitely seems like more of a thing. Like I straight up ran out of ammo as Alan at one point.
What do you do?
I kind of got the sense from them that like, hey, you might want to like run from some of these encounters and not try to kill everything because clearly you're going to run into ammo problems if you just fight stuff endlessly. So it's much more in the kind of Resident Evil end of the spectrum of third-person shooters of like you got to conserve resources. Like healing is not that common.
Gotcha.
Bullets not that common.
Enemies not dropping ammo.
No, I don't believe so. I think it's all just in the environment. They do still have the flashlight mechanic. You do still have to like use the flashlight to burn the shield off the enemies to be able to harm them. So there is that. The enemies feel way more dangerous in this. Like a lot of them have this dash move where they can just like, they almost look like they're fast forwarding where they just go like rocketing past you to the point that they're behind you. And sometimes there will be other enemies still in front of you. So that gets real tricky. But the enemies kind of seem more nimble than you. Like you have limited ammo and the enemies are very nimble around you and it leads to some pretty challenging combat.
Okay.
So it very much feels more like a survival horror game than the last game did.
There was that thing in that one where you could like shine the flashlight on certain words, right? In the environment. Was that?
Yes.
Was that one?
I didn't see that was either in one or one of the DLCs. I forget. Okay. I can't remember if that was actually in.
Well, I guess I was going to ask: are there like environmental traps or anything like that for the enemies you can use, or
maybe some stuff like that? Okay. Like you have a flare gun that acts as kind of like a smart bomb, kind of
little AOE,
yeah, sort of thing. I didn't see a lot of environmental trap stuff, but that could be.
Alan's got to write himself some better weapons, man.
Yes, perhaps.
What is he doing?
It feels like a much more varied game and much more with with a pretty strong identity. You know, like it really feels like a survival horror game with adventure elements.
That's cool because
that are very unique. Like this crime solving. And the other thing about the mind place and the writer's room is they are instantaneous. I'm not talking Ratchet and Clank style, like, oh, the load times are only like 2 seconds. I'm talking like frame to frame. It's like 1 frame transition from playing the game into those other environments. Like they must just keep them in memory or whatever. But it's still like, you know, I feel like the low load time type stuff is still novel enough that you can still be impressed by, like, I literally hit the button, and as fast as I can hit the button, I'm in this totally other environment doing this adventure game.
That's
investigation
wild
stuff.
So
it's cool to see.
Not hidden behind some kind of extended animation of opening a portal.
Absolutely. It's as fast as you can press the button, you are in this other place. But again, the game does not pause, so you can't just do it anytime you want. You have to kind of be careful with it.
And you're not in that other place, and you're just in your mind in that other place. It's not like you can escape a combat encounter by going to this other place. Okay.
No. But it is a fully realized small environment that you walk around and can do different stuff in.
Okay. That all sounds really neat.
It is quite ambitious. It feels like they've got some real ideas and are taking some real swings with it.
Sorry, real quick. Just did any of the Federal Bureau of Control stuff find its way into what you saw?
No, they dropped me into 2 specific chapters, one with each character, and there was not a lot of story stuff in either one of those.
Okay.
Actually, the saga stuff was actually kind of amusing, having finally now watched some Twin Peaks, because I definitely get the Pacific Northwest vibes of, like, there's a lot of weird off-kilter characters hanging around this small Pacific Northwest town. Like the karaoke stuff felt kind of Lynchian in a way, I guess I would say.
Well, so the reason I'm bringing that up is because they announced today that Janina is apparently playing a control agent in this game.
I saw I can't remember if I knew that when I was at the demo or not. I saw that she's in the cast list for this. Maybe I didn't know that actually.
That's fun.
Yeah, they just posted a photo of her and Sam Lake together saying, like, she's in the game as a Federal Bureau of Control agent.
Was she in Control?
No.
Oh, so that's a new character?
That's a new character.
Interesting. So they're okay. Yeah, they didn't say anything about that. Like, I didn't realize they're straight up saying there is Control stuff in this game. I mean, you know, they have made it very clear that it's the same universe.
Yeah. Control definitely has Alan Wake stuff all in it, right?
Yes. There are also some strong Max Payne vibes in parts of the New York stuff in this.
Okay.
That feel as close to referencing Max Payne just about as they can get without owning the IP.
Right.
Which is kind of audacious and cool to see to me. I won't say what it is. I mean, it's more like vibe stuff and not story. So they're not like, there's no Valkyr in this game that I've seen or anything like that.
Not yet. He hasn't written that yet.
But you'll see what I mean when you get there. It feels really original. Like the stuff I saw, like by and large. I mean, obviously the survival horror shooting is, you know, that's not unique. But like the way they're telling the story, some of the tricks they're using around rewriting the environment around you and the investigation stuff and the presentation with the FMV elements integrated and stuff like that. It feels really impressive from what I've seen so far.
That's cool.
Which is
I'm
much
glad
more
you
than I
like
expected going in. Yeah.
And that's like a month away, right? Like that is literally, I think, a month away now.
They pushed it a week or two, but it's like end of October now.
Cool.
Like I was always going to play this game, but it has gone way up my list of like games that I'm actively looking forward to for the rest of the year.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And you got to hang out with Sam.
Yeah. It's cool.
Was it just you, or were there other people?
Thomas Puha was there.
Okay.
Was their head of marketing.
No, I mean like other press, quote unquote.
Oh, they did a big press and influencer event in LA.
Okay.
And they swung through town here to hit us and a couple of other outlets.
Okay.
So I got kind of the private showing.
Lovely. That is Alan Wake 2. That is out, I think, the 27th of October on everything. Not Switch, I should say. Not Switch. But PC, PS5, and Xbox Series X and S. And I guess not PS4. So I guess we're kind of getting down into the, hey, stuff is coming out for PS5. And
yeah, they talked about it a lot there. And also Thomas, if you follow Thomas on Twitter, he talks a lot about the tech of the game too. Like they're pushing a lot of rendering stuff pretty hard. Like I said, some of that New York stuff, like it sounds really grandiose, and part of this is because they are switching from actual FMV back and forth a lot. So you are seeing the actual actor playing Alan Wake
Right.
But there are spots where they switch back to the model where I couldn't tell for sure if it was the model or still the actor. Like I know that sounds like some like real graphics hype stuff, but the graphics tech in that New York stuff is super impressive. They are pushing very hard on that.
Sounds exciting.
I'm sitting here looking at some of the footage right now, and just like some of the cinematic techniques are just like, they just look a lot of it looks like the culmination of stuff they've been trying to do for 20 years.
Sure.
Since the first Max Payne games.
I really liked Control, so if they're taking some cues from Control,
obviously no psi powers, and it's not like a Metroidvania in a giant building like that was. It is somewhat of a different game, but
all right.
Well, speaking of Max Payne.
Yes, speaking of Max Payne, Alex Navarro, you played some El Paso Elsewhere.
Oh, you mean the new Max Payne?
Is it the new Max Payne?
It's the first, I'm going to say, real serious effort anyone's made to make something like it in a good long time.
Okay. Tell me about El Paso Elsewhere, a game we saw during the Next Fest demo, or one of the demos.
Correct.
Yeah,
it was one of the demos during Next Fest. I've seen this game kind of boiling up for a couple of years now. It's something that the lead on it, Xavier Nelson, has been talking about for a while. He's also the mind behind Sunshine Shuffle, the weird talking animals card game, the Airport for Dogs game, a bunch of other things. This is, I'm going to say, of the stuff I've played of his, this feels like the most fleshed out, fully like modern-ish game that him and the people that he works with have tried to make so far. It's low res kind of intentionally, like it's supposed to kind of evoke that 90s PC game sort of like, it's like there are faces, there's a fair amount of animation, but all the textures are kind of low res look to it. But it does it in a way that I think is both knowing and kind of gives it a style of its own. Like it is, it's lo-fi by design, and the general vibe of it is you are this very narration-loving, hard-boiled lead character, James Savage, who is out to stop his ex-girlfriend, who is also a vampire lord that is trying to bring about the end of the world, inside a motel in El Paso, Texas.
And the Max Payne stuff coming in from the kind of noir monologuing, right?
It's that and the shoot dodging, which is very much dodging. Max Payne. Like right, it is literally, there's a slow down time button, there is a die forward, backward, wherever button, and you are doing Max Payne shit while also he is talking his Max Payne shit. I
had forgotten about the slow motion jumping, spin the mouse around, shooting. It's from what I remember you playing in the demo, and I would have to imagine this carries through in retail, is very kind of abstract labyrinthian levels, kind of.
You're in a motel, but then you go down a floor and suddenly it's like, oh, cool, the ceiling's gone and there's doors floating everywhere and the rooms keep reshaping themselves in different ways to bring more enemies in. And a lot of those enemies are, enemy vampires as you are making your way up to Dracula, who is the vampire lordess. And so there's two things here. Is the shooting good? Yeah, it's pretty good. It has a pretty tight feel to it. You kind of have to manage your slowdown meter. You can't just be jumping around slow motion all the time. You kind of have to build it up a little bit before you really go ham on it. But once you kind of get a feel for like where I should be shoot dodging and where I should just be running around gunning or, staking, it has a pretty good flow to it. The other thing is the narration any good? Is it just aping Max Payne, or is it kind of doing its own thing? The tone of it is very Max Payne, but the story and the character, this guy is definitely a tortured noir protagonist, but it isn't just Max Payne metaphors nonstop. Like, he's telling his own story. It has a little bit of its own voice to it, and it's a little funnier than I think Max Payne tended to be. Like, a lot of Max Payne's comedy was tragicomedy. There's some of that here, but also occasionally the protagonist will just be like, it's like, giving some hard-boiled narration, and there's only one man who can stop it. It's me. I'm that guy. Hi. Like that kind of stuff.
Sure.
Where it's just it's a little goofier. It's a little more self-aware and goofy. And the voice is done by Xalavier. Like, it is him doing the narration. And I'm going to say it right now, he is a far more talented voice actor than I would have maybe initially thought. He is really nailing the tone of this thing.
So you're enjoying your time with it?
A lot, yeah. I mean, I'm like an hour and change into it. I don't know that it's a super long game, but I'm having fun with it, and I like that someone has made like a real honest effort to try and make one of these again and is doing kind of a neat spin on it.
Are you playing on the PC?
I am, yes. It's also on Xbox.
Very cool.
It's $20 at launch.
Yes. I'm just looking up the price right now. $20.
James Savage is a pretty good stand-in, hard-boiled noir name that's not Max Payne.
And there are things that they are just straight up aping, like the pills. You're constantly popping pills, like the tone is definitely a loving tribute to Max Payne, but it's more supernatural than those games tended to be.
Dual pistols, slow-mo jumping,
shotgun, all that
hard-boiled action, just all over the place.
Yep.
That's El Paso Elsewhere, and we mentioned this last time, but there is some other El Paso Nightmare. Is that was it the $5
So it's like a prequel
thing?
Story thing that I think came out last year. I have not actually touched that at all, so I don't know what the deal with that is. I think that's not a shooter. I think that's more of a narrative thing.
Okay, gotta get the full story. This is El Paso Elsewhere, available on PC and Xbox platforms, out now. Chants of Sennaar. Chants, not chance. Chants.
Like chants. Gregorian chant.
This game, it was a game that I think, Alex, you had pulled for our Planorama at some point. I didn't know about it.
I kept meaning to dip back in, but I haven't done it yet.
I picked this up yesterday, and I cannot put this game down. I wound up playing it last night until I saw a giant spider in my basement, the biggest spider I've ever seen in my life. And then I stopped, and then woke up very early after I dropped the kids off at school and just continued playing pretty much until this podcast. I absolutely love this game so far. It is kind of in the style of an Obra Dinn or Golden Idol, where you are... There's basically no written English or recognizable language, but you are trying to decipher the symbols as a language, right? So you are trying to figure out what the language is of these different groups, cultures, let's say, within this kind of made-up world, and you do translate them into English, but they do not speak a recognizable language that you can figure out, and it's awesome.
Okay,
like you will through context, through kind of writings, figure out like they'll have different systems for language, though they're kind of Western-ish, but they get harder. Where, hey, this is how this culture or this group pluralizes words, so if you have an I with this symbol, it'll mean we when you get to the kind of translate the things, and you're using that to figure out puzzles, and they do it very intelligently and very player-minded to keep you from having to do too much busy work, I'd say, throughout the game and taking notes. You can take notes right in the game as soon as you see a symbol, playing on PC. Write it down right next to the symbol. It's like, so whenever I see a thing, I'm like, all right, I'm going to give it my best guess because later on I might not know what it is. And then you'll see that symbol again in a different context, and you're just trying to figure it's a very, cryptography logic-based game where we're just trying to decode language and kind of Fez-like.
Yeah, Fez, it kind of makes me think of The Witness, not in the particulars of what you're doing to solve puzzles, but in that you're trying to, like, unpack the logic of a world where you kind of have to infer all of it.
Yeah, but it does have like again, it's got the Golden Idol Obra Dinn-esque thing where I'm not really sure how you design around this, but if you have, let's say, 8 of the 10 things kind of figured out, you can kind of brute force your way into it. It'll give you a big thumbs up when you've like solved a page, let's say. And you can kind of just force your way into some things, which I have done, being like, well, I know these other ones. I'm not quite sure what this word means, but I've got 3 unknowns here. I'll just keep slotting them in until it gives me the thumbs up, which is, valid, I guess, if you figure the rest out. But feels a little cheating sometimes when you're like, I'll just guess my way through until the game tells me I'm right. But it's cool, and the story so far seems interesting and unique, and I'm curious to see how much further it goes with their systems of religion and kind of caste system they have going on built in this world. It's control-wise, it's third-person isometric. You're just kind of running around, clicking on different things to interact with them, and that's kind of there's light puzzle solving. Well, moderate puzzle solving, I wouldn't say extremely light. And you progress through the levels by solving puzzles, which usually give you access to some clues onto how to solve another puzzle, and so forth and so on, as you make your way through it. It's great.
It looks very striking.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it in motion much, but like the look of it is really...
It's got a cool color palette.
Yeah.
It's $20. It's on the PC right now. I want to say, before I get this wrong, let me just double check. It's on Switch and on consoles, though I'm not exactly sure how you're inputting.
What are you saying about the Switch?
Well, it's more the text. Like, I don't know how you'd want to put in all the text, I'm typing constantly in this game, deleting and typing.
Interesting.
Because I'm just writing, like, kind of my thoughts on the vocabulary as I'm trying to translate these words constantly. So I'm not sure how it would be if you just get the kind of OS appropriate alphanumeric keyboard on the screen or whatever to put stuff in. But on the PC, I'm constantly typing in that thing to change my notes and be like, oh, maybe this could mean happiness or enlightenment or fulfillment, and I'll just write that all out in the notes. And it's cool because when somebody else uses that character, it'll show your notes on the sentence, right? Mm-hmm. So you're like, it'll be like, I'm feeling happiness, contentment, enlightenment. You're like, oh, it's probably contentment, and then I'll go back and change it. It's really neat. It makes you, it's got a real, like, you're parsing this out in this world vibe to it. And I love it. I love those kinds of games. Again, very Obra Dinn cool. and Golden Idol and Fez-like.
I might have to give this a look.
It's fun. You'll get the feel for it immediately when it starts off. It starts off, eases you into it. I'm at a point now where the kind of grammatical structure of sentences has changed from what I'm used to, where the kind of objects will move around in the sentence, and so kind of decoding the sentences is getting a little tougher. But and they've given me a lot more vocabulary, unknown vocabulary at a time. They will seal in the main player, your player, has a notebook, and they'll open the notebook and draw some pictures, and you can match certain glyphs to the pictures to seal in the right words, so for sure certain segments of their vocabulary.
That's right. You gotta lock in freshness.
Gotta lock that freshness right in that book. Lot of fun. Chants of Sennaar. If you followed me for all these years and you're kind of on the same page I am with games, I highly recommend it. Checking it out. Really, it's one of those games I want to show my wife because she's a big kind of word nerd, and but I feel like since it does seem like one of those things you want to sit and play on a PC, I'm not sure I'm going to get her down into the basement at the keyboard to sit with me through that one. Also, Trine 5, I finished it. Or we finished it. The Caravella family has finished Trine 5. That game is also great. Fun to play. I don't know if I'd want to play it by myself, but it was really fun to play with the family. A lot of good power-ups in that game. Like a lot of good ability changes, which I wasn't expecting. All the way up until the end, you just get new abilities on the regular.
That's good. That's what they needed, for sure.
Yeah. We went back, and as soon as we finished it, to playing Trine 1, and I'm not sure we're going to make it through Trine 1.
Yeah.
It's a little tough to go back.
For a series that had felt kind of samey, that they definitely needed to just layer new mechanics on.
Yeah, a lot of fun. Pretty lengthy, I'll say, too. We put a bunch of hours into it. Trine 5, A Clockwork Conspiracy, makes me want to Trine 6, not something I thought I would say here on this podcast. So keep going, I guess. Make more Trine. The kids loved it. They were so bummed when it ended. That's why we went
Household
right
game
back
of the
down to
year.
Trine 1. So, whole new generation of Trine fans.
I can't wait for the multiverse reboot.
All the different wizards.
I can't wait for the knight that could use the grappling hook.
Thief Knight is my favorite character. Brad, lastly here, I just wanted to check in with you. Any more F-Zero 99ing?
I've played a little bit. F-Zero?
Yeah.
Just a little bit here and there. Not a ton.
Okay.
Right now. Mostly been spending an inordinate amount of time wrestling with my PC and TV trying to get I want to play Cyberpunk on that new TV.
Yeah.
in the best possible way. And the last 2 nights I have spent dealing with like trying to get VRR to work, trying to get the refresh rate correct.
Oh.
Like all the, NVIDIA control panel settings and stuff like that.
Is it not
Seems
reading them appropriately or properly or easily
everything but VRR is working now.
Okay.
But anyway, I'm almost there. It was a whole process though of like, why does the aspect ratio look like this? Like why is the HDR signal not coming across? Oh, there it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. As someone who has plugged a lot of stuff into a lot of stuff, yes.
If I'm going to go through the trouble of playing that game on a TV, I need it to look right.
Did
hopefully by next week I will have started Cyberpunk.
Not to belabor the point, but did you wind up using that long cable yet?
Yes.
Is it working out?
I've got that fiber optic HDMI cable working just fine.
Great.
Shockingly.
Okay, good. And how long is your run? Or the cable?
50 feet was the shortest I could get that would make it as far as I needed to go.
Oh.
They also have 100 foot.
Oh, man.
And it seems to work just fine so far in my experience. I will say the end that connects to the source, very warm by the time you're done using it.
Warm ends. All right. I think that's going to do for game stuff, unless you guys have anything else you want to hit before we get into the news. We're going to take another quick break here. We're going to come back. Hey, folks, I'm not kidding. You should go check out Chants of Sennaar. It's a fun game. It's a good game. But we're going to take a quick break here, and we're going to come back, and we're going to talk about the news. Stick around. And we are back, and it is time for the news. The old Nextlander podcast. Was this the C block? We got the third pillar of the Nextlander podcast, the news. Usually we fill this segment in with some Activision, Microsoft, reoccurring Activision, Microsoft news. There is some stuff there, but it's so nebulous. We decided instead to go with the other one that's been keeping afloat here, Unity. Brad Shoemaker, what Unity Watch 2023? Where are we at?
I mean, I guess the CMA did say that the Ubisoft stuff makes the Microsoft Activision thing likely to go through, so that's definitely happening.
I saw that, and then I saw a thing when I was just during our break on Game Industry Biz that it said like the FTC is reopening a thing. FTC plans new in-house hearing against Microsoft Activision acquisition. Boy, that's a mouthful. I did not get a chance to read the whole articles, but we are not going to talk about that now.
Not yet.
We'll get there, I'm sure, in the couple of weeks.
I think that is the 17th, I think is the deadline. Anyway, Unity rolled out the new terms of their highly controversial plan to charge developers by number of game installs.
That's right. The runtime fee, is that the...
Yeah, runtime fee is what they were calling it, I guess. It seems widely to have been accepted by just about all game developers that I follow, including the ones who are the most like loudly critical of the original policy.
You're saying this new model?
Yes, even some of the developers like Rami Ismail and George Broussard, some of the ones who have really been going hard on both unpacking and analyzing this thing and talking about how shit it was. Like both of them in particular, I was like, just as a bellwether, I was like kind of shocked at how seemingly okay they were with this pivot.
Mm-hmm.
I saw some commentary in an article about the strategy of anchoring, basically coming up with something so unpalatable that when you come up with the next thing, you're like, well, at least it isn't that thing.
I absolutely had that thought. Not to say they did it intentionally, because that would be
some
insane, because the damage they've done to their reputation and their relationship with their customers who are game developers is like nobody would ask for that, or nobody would take that on willingly.
If this was their intention, this is the dumbest thing they could have done.
Yeah, totally. But if they had just rolled out this version of the policy, I don't know, there probably would have been just maybe some grumbling from people of like, oh, there's just levying another tax on us.
Yeah.
Probably wouldn't have been very popular. Instead, people were like, oh my God, this is amazing. This is totally acceptable.
I've seen again, a lot, not a developer myself, but I've seen some commentary of like, the trust is the thing now that is going to be hard to continue on a Unity platform where we're not sure if this pivot's going to happen again, or when you commit years and years to a base,
they are certainly going to still lose customers over this. Probably the best aspect of this though is that people currently engaged on a Unity project are no longer affected.
Yes, it is.
They tried to make it a retroactive policy, and now they're saying this policy is only going to go into effect for the next LTS, like the long-term support version of Unity, which is not coming out until 2024.
And usually that's a major revision, right? That's a major number change.
So anybody making a Unity game today, unless they upgrade to that new version of the engine, will not be affected by this. So like that, because, disrupting people's plans midstream with this shitty policy is like extremely uncool.
Yeah.
So, giving people the assurance that the work they've already done is not in danger is a big part of this. They said that the games made with Unity Personal are no longer subject to this fee at all. I believe Personal is free. They've also increased the revenue cap you can make on a game made with Unity Personal to $200,000.
Yeah, and they're I think they're getting rid of the made with Unity restriction on that too, so you don't even need to have that on there anymore.
Yeah. The fee now will only apply to games that make at least $1 million in 12 months.
And I believe is optional. I think you can opt in for a 2.5% rev share.
Yes. So I guess that's probably the actual biggest change here is that now, if you even are subject to this at all, you can just choose a flat 2.5% revenue share, or you can go with this. Oh, and the other thing is it's no longer install based. It's just like sales based.
And it's like self-reported numbers, both on revenue and on the kind of install numbers here, which, again, I don't know how that stuff actually works, like how you self-report those things. I mean, I can understand the self-reporting of revenue because you're probably reporting that to some government agency.
Mm-hmm.
Again, not a developer, but it seems like on the Unreal to Unity side, this is still complicated, but kind of in line with how Unreal has their fee structures, right? And more similar. But man, you don't want to get on the boat and have that thing get shaken up while you're mid development, right? That's scary.
And again, I as much as this walkback seems like it is taking care of what a lot of the concerns were, I'm wondering if maybe the damage is just too far done at this point. Like, people that have already decided I'm moving somewhere else, like, is this going to be the thing that brings them back?
Probably not. I mean, I would never say the damage is permanent, but it feels like a years-long process of convincing people who have been spooked by this to actually trust them again.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, aside from the part where you need to have great and competitive software and tools, right? Like, Unity itself needs to maintain that it is a very good piece of software.
Mm-hmm.
And the agreements, I don't know if you have to do what kind of make good you have to do, but come the next project, I could see a lot of people looking into other stuff to just get away from this because of the drama. I mean, I'm sure a lot of developers were sweating bullets over this thing and in real kind of existential ways, of like, hey, is this going to affect my project? We saw some of the immediate stuff that came back of developers saying they're going to pull their games down if this goes up or whatever. So I don't know. Again, not my world. It's for the developers to really figure out. But from the outside looking in, the collateral damage seems rough.
Yeah, it's bad. I'm not going to say this is a good thing for developers to make them pay more than they would have previously. Like, it's not good. It's just dramatically better.
Yes.
You
got anchored, Brad. You got anchored in.
Obviously, Unity's got to make money. Is it game developers' problem that Unity spent so much on acquisitions and thought that the free money train was going to last forever, and now they've got a hole to dig themselves out of? I don't know.
Yeah. We'll see. And we'll see what happens with there's still some question, right, with putting up their terms of service and kind of their ongoing agreements, like they up and down. What is the clarity on this stuff? Will they put up a thing that says they won't do this in the future to put up barriers of trust? So we'll see as that stuff develops.
They seem to realize how bad they fucked up. Like, I don't think the most most out of touch corporate executive could miss how bad this is.
Yeah.
Frankly,
Mm-hmm.
granted, like Hollywood has given us some pretty profound examples of corporate executives missing how bad things are recently.
Yeah, but you know what? It seems like they're starting to figure it out.
but in this particular, I mean, I've never seen a backlash like this before. Like, they have to know. They have to very acutely know how bad this was.
Good for people pushing back where they should, because it also shows you what companies would like to get away with if they could, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, like, really the crux of this is just, hey, they're giving people a chance to avoid this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Giving people time to realize, okay, if I make a game with that next version of Unity, I am potentially going to be subject to this, but not midstream on a game I've already sunk 3 years into.
Yes.
Like, I'll be curious to see if Mechacrit goes through with their plan to rebase on something other than Unity for their next game, now that this has changed.
Yeah, I think this is probably a story that's still about 5 years out to see what happens to Unity's revenue on the next batch of projects, right? After this one is released.
Yeah, I mean, one through line I saw on Twitter from a lot of developers as all this crap has been happening is that they like working with the tools. Like, they like working with the engine, Like, there's a lot of people who learned on Unity and rely on aspects of it and are very used to it. And, like, I don't really see anybody complaining about the tech. It's all about the policy. So I'm sure there are some people who would like to stick with what they know and find useful if they can.
Totally. Like, it seems like a nightmare to switch horses mid-race, I guess is maybe a way to say it.
You don't change horses midstream.
Yeah. Horses, terrible swimmers. That's the Unity news. I'm sure we'll be talking more about that in the coming years, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
Brad, the Platinum news.
Mm-hmm.
What's going on over there? More shakeups.
Quite simply, Hideki Kamiya is leaving PlatinumGames in like 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
This sounds like a decision, from what I could tell from looking into this, that is not based on kind of a, not getting pushed out or anything like that.
No.
From what we could tell, but
I mean, he says something to the effect of, based on my personal beliefs or something along those lines it's time for me to go, basically. Yeah,
of course that, Platinum took 10-cent investment some 2-3 years ago, so that got a bunch of people whipped into a frenzy of like, oh, is 10-cent applying too much pressure? You have to leave to do your own thing now or something like that. But that's all just internet hand-wringing and speculation. There's no sign of that. I mean, I guess the thing we can say, though, is that Platinum's output has been a bit spotty the last 2-3 years.
That's what I was going to point to, yeah.
Like, Bayonetta 3 seemed like it was well-received, but didn't light the world on fire. Is that accurate?
Yeah, it was good. I think Bayonetta 3 did turn out well. It just did not necessarily hook me the way the first two did.
Yeah, also it took forever to come out.
Yeah.
God. Was it Babylon's Fall? Is that game?
That was the one that really did not take off at all.
Like that was a pretty much unmitigated disaster on their part. I'm not sure what else they've even done in the last couple 3 years.
Those are kind of the two biggest examples of things they've put out in the last several years.
Yeah. I forgot, looking up Platinum, I forgot that Shinji Mikami was one of the founders of that company, because he's since gone on and founded and then sold another company.
Yep.
And left it.
It has been some time.
I don't think that wasn't familiar to me until you just said it.
Granted, I also forgot how Platinum's been around since 2006. That's actually way longer than I realized. It's like right after RE4 shipped, they got out of there. Or actually right after the Capcom 7, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like most of them were involved in Capcom 7 stuff, and then they all got out of there and started Platinum.
Platinum, this article on game industry biz says that maybe I just forgot about this, that they had opened a new studio in the last couple of years to do a follow-up to Beautiful Joe and Wonderful 101.
I don't remember that at all.
I don't remember that at all
that
either.
maybe it could have happened and just slipped under my radar, but I truly do not remember that.
That sounds like vaguely familiar. Did you say it's a new studio, like a spinoff or something?
Opened up a secondary studio.
Oh, second studio.
Yeah, or
Okay.
it's
Yeah,
a new Tokyo studio is the language they
That
use.
makes sense. I mean, yeah, that's the kind of thing you would do if you took money from an outside party for sure.
We're opening a 100-person studio in Tokyo, and we're going to be recruiting.
They also now, as of last November, they now also have PlatinumGames Fukuoka.
Okay.
So they have 3 studios.
Huh. Well,
anyway, I find
what?
Kamiya to be an entertaining dude. At least on
Yeah,
Twitter.
like I don't know. I always felt like his brusqueness and his unpleasantness was sort of like, it's funny to a point, but there's also like a degree of, you're literally just an antisocial person. And believe me, I'm an antisocial person too, but maybe don't make it like the whole of your personality. I don't know.
I did end up unfollowing him after a while because it was kind of intense.
It's just too much.
I will maintain that photo of a young Kamiya in motorcycle gear is maybe the coolest photo of a game developer that's ever been taken.
wow. I think
Bold
Kojima
statements.
is here to argue with you, because that guy's got some cool photos of himself too.
Yeah, I don't know if they're this cool though.
Yeah.
I don't know. Presumably he would continue making games.
Oh, I'm sure he will somewhere. I don't know what he's planning on doing, but I don't think that guy sounds like he's trying to get out of games entirely.
I feel this outcome is for the best. I will continue to create in my Hideki Kamiya way.
Yes, and we know what that way is.
That's pretty funny.
That's okay. So we'll see what happens both with Platinum and with Kamiya. And as things
Yeah,
move
like
forward.
what the future of that studio is certainly an open question.
Microsoft is going to acquire him. It's just him as the person.
Just put him in a room by himself, let him make stuff, not having to deal with other people.
Yeah.
Or say he's making stuff.
Yeah.
Speaking of making stuff, Brad Shoemaker, apparently they're making more of that Star Wars Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
Star Wars, that's the franchise name, Star Wars Jedi?
Yes.
Okay.
That always stood out to me when Fallen Order came out. Everybody called it Fallen Order or Jedi Fallen Order.
And that's Star Wars.
Just quietly the whole time. I'm just like head in my hands. You realize what the branding of this franchise is, right? It's Star Wars : Jedi.
Star Wars Jedi.
Whatever.
I guess Cameron Monaghan said at what was that, Comic-Con? Oh wait, different Ocala Comic-Con. There are a lot of Comic-Cons. He said in a panel they are in the middle of working on the 3rd game now.
Surprise!
So, just in case you were wondering if there would be more of that or not.
I have to imagine that game was greenlit even before that second one came out, and
Probably
the only
right,
thing that
actually.
would have stopped that thing in its tracks was that thing fully tanking, which it obviously did not.
Yeah, you're probably right. I think it did do quite well, or well enough to put out press releases, right?
I think it did. I think it's doing better than the first one did, if I'm not 100%
Okay.
wrong,
Well.
but I think that's the case.
First game did very well, so I'm
Yeah.
sure this is also doing extremely well. I missed, apparently, Stig Asmussen is leaving Respawn or left already. That
Oh, interesting.
apparently just happened recently.
So, according to that story, it was right after that panel with...
they announced it at the same
Monahan.
panel?
I think it's a panel right after.
Okay. He was the director of both of those games, for reference. He was the guy that spun up that whole team, as a matter of fact, like years and years ago when they said, hey, we're going to make a Star Wars game. We need to hire. He was the one out there saying like, hey, we're looking for you if you want to work on the Star Wars game. So he's been kind of the guy on those.
Those are good games. I found the second one a little forgettable. Like literally forgettable, as in a couple of podcasts ago, couldn't remember if I had even finished it or not.
It's just like right back to the same problems with Mortal Kombat when you got to go write something new.
Yeah.
What do you come up with? Like when they had Order 66 to trade on,
Yeah.
they came up, they had a good story, but as soon as you got to wade into unknown territory in an established franchise, it's hard.
Yeah.
They're still milking Order 66. That goes a long way. You would be shocked at how many Jedi survived that order.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that. It feels like I consider myself a Star Wars fan, but I guess I am not anymore. I'm just like, I can't absorb all the Star Wars stuff. But it seems like that is the universe we're in, right? Is the fallout from Order 66 now is like kind of the main thrust of Star Wars stuff.
But they just kind of keep doing that.
I mean, it was a rough time.
I get a little frustrated at the back and forth over that sometimes. Like, people complain, like, oh, I guess even more Jedi survived. And then people are like, well, yeah, of course, it's a big galaxy or whatever. But, like, I think that's missing the reason people are complaining. It's not, is this plausible in universe that more Jedi could have survived? It's, hey, do something else.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, hey, please come up with another idea.
Or, again, cranky old Star Wars fan here. That's me. But, it was kind of cool when like Luke was the only Jedi out there and he didn't really know what he was doing, right? Like that was like a interesting thing to be like, damn, this Jedi is amazing in a world where nobody really believes in Jedi anymore, and it doesn't really have all the training and the powers and the fun stuff. And then the contrast to that, which was fun, was, wow, let's look at a time when there were tons of Jedi. And like, oh, this is the height of the Jedi. And being in the in-between part is like,
I guess arguably you are kind of undermining that aspect of the story by
you're like
continuing to...
There are some Jedi, and they're kind of powerful because they were at the height of the Jedi, but like there are still some. It's like not as interesting to me.
I wish I had made note of who said this. A game developer said something on Twitter that really stuck with me the other day. I want to say it was Josh Sawyer, but I could be totally wrong, so I won't necessarily attribute it to him. But it was about taking feedback from people on your work. And it was in the context of game development in particular, but I guess it's probably applicable broadly. But the idea was, always listen to people when they say there are problems, just don't listen to their solutions.
Okay.
So, like, if people are complaining about something, you know, it's worth thinking about why that might be a problem for people.
Yeah.
Just don't necessarily listen to the why or the what to do about it from them.
Gotcha.
I had a similar producer who said, give them what they want, not what they think they want.
Yes, that's also, I mean, that's kind of the Steve Jobs classic, right? Tell people don't give people what they want, tell them what they want.
Yeah.
You know, in this context, though, it makes me think about the Jedi thing of like, you know, if a lot of people are complaining that you keep doing this, another Jedi survived this thing, like, maybe don't listen to what they want to do with it or whatever, but like, you know, maybe like there might be something there, you know, it might be worth thinking about. Are people getting burned out on this device?
Multiverse time.
Oh god.
I mean, they've been dabbling with it. Star Wars has in like very like third order like animated series type stuff, like not in the main, certainly not in movies yet.
Okay.
But isn't that the Star Wars? Isn't that the World Between Worlds?
Stop. I don't know.
I believe is where multiverse is creeping into Star Wars.
My brother said again.
Could be wrong.
I don't. They're like pushing out past the frontier or whatever at this point in some Star Wars stuff, past the like explored parts of the galaxy. I stopped clocking Star Wars stuff. The only thing I care about in Star Wars is that the Cantina Band is out there playing their fine music and keeping the fine art of Jizz alive. So. That's as long as they don't go and change that, I'll be a happy Jizzmeister here at home.
You can't say shit like that, man.
What can you? Maybe you can't say it, but can you type it into a Patreon post form?
I don't know if you can.
I don't know, but I sense you're about to.
Should a happy Jizzmeister be the first title of a podcast that we post to our new podcast host?
Yeah, look. Jizz is all about the notes you don't play.
You have to stop saying it, man. You just have to.
Well, Brad, why am I?
I'm gonna let Alex take this one because he seems very uncomfortable with it. I thought he would be all about talking about Jizz music.
No, I'm all for talking about Jizz. I'm not all for about talking about Jizz music.
Oh,
I don't like Jizz music. I don't think Jizz music is cool. Jizz, on the other hand, is fine. We can talk about that all day.
You do like do some Jizz hands once in a while?
No, yeah. Well.
Put up those Jizz hands. Let's see them. You did it. There. Thank you, Alex.
You got to pay for that.
I look. I'm not going to say I was even aware of this until this story, but I did not know the music genre in the Cantina.
Wait, really? You didn't know that?
Wait, you didn't even know it all about
I don't think I did. I mean, if I did, I feel like I would have remembered.
Oh man,
I'm like the least Star Wars guy on this trio, and I feel like I've known that for centuries.
You've never heard of a Jizz whaler?
I have never heard of a Jizz whaler.
Well, I have, but it's probably not the one you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. You have to stay up real late on Cinemax to get the Jizz whalers.
Should I refer to Wikipedia?
Sure, yeah.
Should I refer to the Wook?
Yeah.
On
so
this.
What does the Wook
What's
have
the
to
Wook
say?
got?
Wow, it's only like a 2-line entry in the database. A Jizz whaler was a musician who specialized in playing Jizz songs.
Great.
Max Rebo and his band often played popular Jizz whaler standards.
That's great.
That's it. That's all I got for you.
So the story you pulled here, Brad, is that apparently
The reason we keep saying Jizz.
I don't know why I put this in here.
Because it's fun.
Yeah.
This short story collection, From a Certain Point of View, Return of the Jedi. Is that really the collection name? There's a line should I just read the line?
Yes, please do.
It involves, I'm quoting this article from the AV Club here. The tale involves Rebo flashing back to improvising a new tune, unlike, quote, one of any number of Jatz standards he knew by heart. Jatz standards. Is that any better than Jizz? Because I feel like I could just start using Jatz in place of Jizz in my life and be totally fine. Everybody would know exactly what I mean.
They'll know what you mean.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I came home and there was Jatz just all over the place.
I'm going to say this. As long as Disney was in charge of Star Wars, this was always a threat to happen. There was always going a chance that someone would notice and say, no, we can't do that. So I was not totally blindsided by this, but I am unhappy about it.
Fair. They're undermining George Lucas's creative vision.
Yeah.
Do you think George knew?
I thought he came up with it, but maybe not. Because
I'm saying he came up with it, but do you think he knew?
That is a much richer and deeper question.
I'm gonna say Lucas was like, it's like jazz, but just change the letter. That feels very Lucas to me.
Yes.
Not going for didn't know about the kind of the whole outsider bigger world of Jizz, and just was like, I'm so I don't care. I'm so lazy. We'll just say jazz.
He could have called it Jaws or Jizz or Jizz.
Jaws would have worked. Or like plunk rock,
yeah.
Could have put any other vowel in there.
The first time someone actually explained to George why that is in any way a double entendre, he would have just stared blankly and said, I just thought it sounded like jazz.
Yeah, exactly.
I just thought I just changed the letter in jazz. I don't know what you're saying. This is upsetting to me. This is my George Lucas. It's not very good. But this is how I imagine George Lucas talking in a conversation.
Okay. I immediately imagine somebody going, George, I gotta talk to you about this. Just probably, and him being like, what? And then explaining, and him immediately crossing 7 other things off a list that's like, well, I guess Jizz Vader is gone, and Darth Jizz. This is very disturbing.
This gives new meaning to the phrase Darth Icky.
That's right. Well, we could still use Darth Spunk, right? And be like, no, George.
I think the Jizz standards are arguably lower than they should be.
I used to trade against the Jizz standards. It's tough times out there, Mama.
Ron Paul's out there talking about making sure we return to the Jizz standard.
Tough times, Daddy.
Hard times.
Hard times. Sorry, and now I'm jizzing
get
up
it right, okay?
I'm jizzing up all my wrestler references here. Really jats that one up.
Really jizzing up the works.
Anyway, is there room in the universe for Jatz and Jizz?
Not anymore. There can only be one. I know where my vote lies.
I kind of like the word Jatz. I want Jatz to just become something even more.
It just sounds like you're talking about the New York Jets.
Meet the Jats.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. They still suck, even thousands and thousands of years in the future.
Anyway, that's the news.
Just to try to get things back on track, I put that picture of Kamiya in Slack.
Oh, God, it's a good photo.
Just so we can stop talking about this other subject.
That picture makes me want to Jatz. You heard me.
I heard you.
That photo looks like it is. That photo looks like it was made in AI. Somebody took him and then was like, give me a cool photo from the 50s or 60s with this person.
Draw me a guy who is the first person you beat up in a Yakuza game.
/ imagine the first person you beat up. Photorealistic 1960s. Coolest Jackie you've ever seen. Cool. All right, that's going to do it for the news, folks. I hopefully you got something out of that, something worth talking to your friends about at the old water cooler, whether it be Unity, whether it be Kamiya's jacket, or Star Wars Jizz. Not going to stop saying it.
No, nor should you.
We've got a podcast, and then we have an email. And those two things come together for podcast emails, podcast@nextlander.com, podcast@nextlander.com. Say it the third time, podcast@nextlander.com. Send them in. Get your questions in there. We're going to scoop them up. We're going to go through those questions, take a look at them, and we're going to do it on another episode. This one's running a little long here, so we're going to save those emails for another episode. So send them in. We'll put them in a little bag. That's where we look at them, a little email bag. We got a bunch of stuff going on, not the least of which is Hard Boiled happening on the Watchcast.
It happened. We did it.
You should go check that out. That is up this week over on the Patreon. And then we are moving into our month of horrors and spooky stuff with Ghost Watch going up next week. And Alex, do you have the schedule up for the October month?
Not yet, but it will be on the Patreon before this week is up.
What are some things that you can mention to the folks there? Because
I'll just say it. I'll say what we're doing because we have other foreign horror films. Foreign horror. There we go. I said it right. On the docket, and our films include the original Suspiria from Italy, the Babadook from Australia. We have Train to Busan from Korea, and then we also have for you, Vinny, Houseu from Japan.
Can't wait. Those sound like a lot of fun. I really enjoyed Ghost Watch as well. And Hard Boiled. Look, you should go check out the Watchcast. Even if you didn't watch it, just listen to it. It's a heck of a thing.
You can hear the horrible dub for Hard Boiled, which is not good.
I didn't even switch. I never switched over to the dub.
You should. It was a bad dub.
That is, like I said, Hard Boiled up on the Patreon now. Next week will be Ghost Watch, and then continuing on with the October month of horrors. And who knows where we'll be in November. Sounds like the WGA is off strike now officially. Is that right?
They have, all the voting bodies have voted to ratify the contract. It does not sound like it has officially gone into effect yet, but the strike ends. Either it has ended or is about to end. And now it is up to SAG-AFTRA to negotiate their deal, and also the SAG voice actors who are currently negotiating with the video game companies.
So best of luck to everyone involved there, and to if you're in either of those unions, Godspeed, and hopefully you get what you need.
It sounds like they got pretty much everything they asked for by and large. Right. So it when they announced it, they said it is an extraordinary deal, and I don't feel like they would have said that if it wasn't the case.
Great. Good. And maybe by the end of the year, I'll find out what the hell happened to Agent Cooper.
I think as long as we start by November, we should be fine.
Great.
We'll see how that goes.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
So that is going to do it for this week's show. You can check out those things, like I said, over on the Patreon. Never Been a Better Podcast. Big fun one up there now. You can go through our, we hit the major podcast points: pornography, food, all those things that you have to hit when you have a podcast. You got the Watchcast up there now, Ramblecast up there now. We'll have Planoramas. We're going to have a Patron's Choice coming up at the end of this week. So you can go vote over on patreon.com/Nextlander. You'll find a tier that's right for you over there, and that's where we got the majority, the lion's share of our support. So thank you, everybody there. There is one tier, though, on the Patreon that gets their names read on this here show. And Alex Navarro, would you do the honors of reading this week's Mysterious Benefactors?
I most certainly can. This week's Mysterious Benefactors are Ryan Waterman, RRE, John Richardson, Vornak, Infelicitous Rips, Kelly F., Brian Lucier, Skywarp, John Hubbard, Sean Miller, Evan Cook, Mark Wilhelm, Jerry Lee, Deirdre but with rad cyber parts and a sick coat, Gary Pejsky, Robert Fisher, John McInnes, Bunny Fiend, Peter Reardon, Thomas Lynn, Jad Rita, Statics, Andrew Jackson, Mega Crane, Razgriz 2, Brian Murphy, Randy Duax, Andrew Tiepkin, Alex Wu, It Me JP, Matt Clements Jr., Edward Schick, Andrew Slosky, Steve Lynn, Matthew Herrig, David Campos, and Tyler Treese.
And a very special thanks to all of our mysterious benefactors, and a special thanks to everyone who has gone over to patreon.com/Nextlander and supported us, everyone who's watched us over on YouTube and Twitch and listened to this fine podcast. We're actually switching podcast hosting, so if there's anything funky going on, hopefully not, hopefully it's a seamless transition, but if there's anything funking going on, our apologies, and hopefully that'll all be smooth over and go away, vanish. Good news though is as we switch podcast boy, I gotta learn to speak again. As we switch podcast host, we'll be doing our ads a little bit differently, and that might resolve some of the shifting around of the markers with the dynamic ads. So going forward, we'll see how that works out, but the markers might be locked in, which I know for those folks who have the ads can be an issue. We got a bunch of other stuff up this week. Remnant continues. We are trucking along. Man, we made some progress in Remnant 2 on Monday. Brad, you think we're going to beat it?
I hope so.
I hope so, too.
I want to see the rest of that game.
Yeah, we're cruising. I'm enjoying it. We got a grab bag going on this week, and like I said before, we got a Patron's Choice coming up on Friday. A bunch of fun things up on the Patron Choice poll. Brad, what's up there now?
I was actually just planning to look and see where we're at with that one. It had 3 votes when we started.
Great. It's a long podcast. Plenty of time to vote.
Wow.
Okay.
What?
Okay.
Man. Isletide Hotel has 74% of the vote.
Isletide Hotel. I did put in the upcoming notes. I maybe pushed people to go vote for Isletide. That's a little... Might have put my thumb on the scale.
I'm going to be real. I'm not going to be mad if that's the thing that wins.
The thing that blows my mind, though, is that Escape from Tarkov is in 3rd.
What?
I thought people would want to see me suffer.
Look, I don't want to see you suffer, but if you enjoy suffering, what you do?
Well, Tarkov has a certain reputation.
Yeah. Yes. Only those weird Jatz sickos love Tarkov.
Maybe its reputation has not spread far and wide.
Look, we can come back to these things.
True.
All right, so you can go vote over at patreon.com/Nextlander. Alex Navarro, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Brad Shoemaker, thank you very much. Mm-hmm. And we'll be back next week with another podcast. You can bank on it. See you, everybody. Bye.